Black Myth Wukong. Chapter 1. The Fall of the Monkey King. The celestial court shimmered like a mirage, its golden palaces and rainbow bridges suspended in an endless sea of clouds. Jade pillars stretched towards an impossibly azure sky, while the air itself seemed to shimmer with divine energy. It was a realm of perfect harmony, where immortals danced to the music of the spheres and nectars of enlightenment flowed like water. But on this day, that harmony shattered like a mirror struck by lightning. Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, great sage equal to heaven, strode through the pearly gates with a cocky grin plastered across his simian features. His fur bristled with barely contained power, each step leaving scorched footprints in the immaculate celestial stone. Behind him trailed an army of demons and disgruntled minor deities, their weapons glinting in the eternal sunlight. "Oi, Jade Emperor!" Wukong bellowed, his voice echoing across the stunned courtyard. "I've come to claim my rightful place." Celestial guards materialized, their gleaming armor a stark contrast to Wukong's wild earthly appearance. They leveled golden spears at the intruder, but uncertainty flickered in their eyes. This was no ordinary demon after all. This was the one who had stolen immortality itself, who had struck his name from the book of life and death with his own hand. Wukong's laughter boomed across the courtyard. With a twirl of his fingers, his legendary staff, the Rui Jingu Bang, appeared. One moment it was small enough to tuck behind his ear, the next it expanded to the size of a massive pillar. "Come now," Wukong taunted, spinning the staff with deceptive ease. "Is this how you treat an old friend?" A murmur rippled through the crowd of immortals gathering at the edges of the courtyard. Some whispered of Wukong's great deeds, of how he had once been a guardian of heaven itself. Others hissed of his arrogance, his theft of the celestial peaches, his constant disruption of the cosmic order. The air grew heavy, charged with the weight of conflicting energies. And then, like a thunderclap, a voice cut through the tension. "Enough!" The crowd parted, revealing the Jade Emperor himself. He stood tall and resplendent, his robes shimmering with the light of 1,000 stars, his eyes, ancient and knowing, fixed upon Wukong with a mixture of sorrow and steel. "Sun Wukong!" The Jade Emperor's voice was soft, yet it carried to every corner of the vast courtyard. "Have you not caused enough chaos? Have you not been granted enough power and prestige?" Wukong's grin never faltered, but something flickered in the depths of his golden eyes. "Enough," he scoffed. "I was born from stone, old man. I clawed my way up from nothing, and still you and your precious bureaucrats look down on me. No more. I've come to take what's mine, the throne of heaven itself." A collective gasp rose from the assembled immortals. Even Wukong's own followers shifted uneasily, some wondering if they had pledged themselves to true madness. The Jade Emperor's face hardened. "So be it," he said, his voice laced with genuine regret. "You leave us no choice, Monkey King. Let heaven itself bear witness to your folly." With a gesture, the Emperor summoned the mightiest warriors of the celestial court. Deities of war and cosmic guardians materialized, their weapons humming with power beyond mortal comprehension. Wukong's army roared, surging forward to meet them. The Monkey King himself leapt high into the air, his staff growing to impossible proportions. "Come then," he howled, eyes blazing with defiance and something darker, a hunger that could never be satiated. "Show me what your vaunted heaven is made of. The battle that followed would be sung of for eons to come." Wukong was a whirlwind of fur and fury, his staff striking with the force of colliding planets. He shifted forms with dizzying speed, now a raging tiger, now a serpent of living lightning, now a storm of razor-sharp feathers. For every immortal that fell before him, 10 more rose to take their place. The very fabric of reality groaned under the weight of the conflict. Entire constellations were rewritten in the sky as wayward blows struck the heavens themselves.
But even as Wukong carved a path of destruction through the celestial court, a creeping realization began to dawn in his eyes.
For every soldier he struck down, the Jade Emperor restored with a mere thought. The wounds Wukong inflicted on heaven itself healed almost instantly, the cosmic order reasserting itself against his chaos. Exhaustion began to seep into his bones, his breaths coming in ragged gasps, and still the Emperor stood unmoved, watching with those ancient, sorrowful eyes. "Do you see now, son Wukong?" The Jade Emperor's voice cut through the din of battle. "Your power is great, but it is nothing compared to the fundamental laws that govern existence itself. You cannot win this fight. Never," Wukong snarled, but doubt had crept into his voice. His followers were scattered, broken, or had simply abandoned him in the face of heaven's might. He stood alone, defiant to the last. With a final, desperate roar, Wukong hurled himself at the Emperor, his staff aimed at the ruler's heart. But before he could strike, a blinding light engulfed him. The Monkey King froze in mid-air, his eyes wide with disbelief. "This pains me, old friend," the Jade Emperor said softly, "but for the sake of all realms you must be contained." The light intensified, and Wukong felt himself being compressed, shrunk, pulled downward with inexorable force. He opened his mouth to scream defiance, but no sound emerged. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the Jade Emperor's face, etched with an emotion Wukong couldn't quite comprehend. Pity. Then there was only the mountain, solid stone pressed in on all sides, squeezing, suffocating. Wukong thrashed against his prison, howling soundlessly into the unyielding rock. But it was no use. The weight of an entire mountain infused with heaven's will bore down upon him. As consciousness began to slip away, one thought burned in Wukong's mind with the intensity of a dying star. This isn't over. And in the darkness beneath the mountain, the Monkey King slept. Dreaming of vengeance, of freedom, of a reckoning that would shake the very pillars of heaven and earth. But the mountain remained immovable, its stone face betraying nothing of the power imprisoned within. And so began the long wait, as the realms above continued their cosmic dance, heedless of the chaos that slumbered below, waiting for the day it would be unleashed once more. Chapter 2. Awakening. Darkness. Endless, crushing darkness. For centuries it was all son Wukong knew. The weight of the mountain pressed down upon him, an ever-present reminder of his defeat. Time lost all meaning in that lightless prison. There was only the stone, the silence, and the slow burn of his fury. But even mountains are not eternal. The first tremor was so faint that Wukong thought he had imagined it. A hairline crack in the perfection of his prison. Then another, slightly stronger. The mountain groaned, an ancient giant disturbed from slumber. Wukong's eyes snapped open, golden irises blazing in the darkness. He pushed against the stone, muscles atrophied from centuries of disuse straining against the immovable weight. Nothing happened. The tremors intensified. Dust and small rocks showered down upon the imprisoned Monkey King. A distant part of his mind registered that this was wrong. He shouldn't be able to feel such things, not with the mountain fused to his very being by celestial magic. Something had changed. With a roar that shook the foundations of the earth, Wukong summoned every ounce of strength left in his battered body. He pushed, clawed, raged against his prison. The mountain's power held firm, but now Wukong could sense hairline fractures spreading through its mystic barriers. "Enough!" he bellowed, his voice raw and feral after eons of silence. "I am Sun Wukong, the great sage equal to heaven. No prison can hold me." As if in response to his defiance, the tremors reached a fever pitch. The very air seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. And then, with a sound like the world itself splitting apart, the mountain cracked. Light, blinding and painful after an eternity of darkness, poured in. Wukong squinted against its intensity, his eyes watering as he clawed his way towards freedom. Rocks tumbled around him, no longer an impenetrable barrier but mere obstacles to be overcome. With a final titanic effort, the Monkey King burst forth from his prison in an explosion of stone and dust. He landed in a crouch, chest heaving, limbs trembling with exertion and the simple joy of movement. For a long moment, Wukong simply breathed, savouring the crisp air that filled his lungs. Then, slowly, he raised his head and took in his surroundings. The world had changed. Gone was the lush forest that had once surrounded his mountain prison. In its place stood a barren landscape, trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their leaves withered and grey. The sky above was a sickly yellow, churning with ominous clouds that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. Wukong rose unsteadily to his feet, his legs wobbling like a newborn fawn's. He took a tentative step, then another, marvelling at the simple act of walking after so long. A grin spread across his face, the old mischievous light dancing in his eyes. "Well," he chuckled, his voice rough from disuse, "it seems the party started without me." With a flourish, Wukong reached behind his ear, calling forth his legendary weapon, the Ruyi Bang. But where the staff should have appeared, instantly responding to his will, there was nothing. Frowning, Wukong tried again, and again. Each time he felt only the faintest whisper of his once great power, slipping away like smoke through his fingers. "No," he growled, frustration building. "No, no, no." In desperation, Wukong attempted one of his famous transformations. He envisioned himself as a mighty dragon, wings spread wide to catch the wind. But his form remained stubbornly monkey-shaped, his fur matted and dull. The truth hit him like a physical blow. The Jade Emperor's punishment had done more than imprison him. It had stripped him of his divine abilities, leaving him little more than a common monkey. Rage boiled up within Wukong, hot and familiar. He wanted to howl his defiance to the heavens, to scale the celestial mountains once more and demand the return of his power. But as he gazed at the twisted landscape around him, a new emotion crept in alongside the anger. Curiosity. What had happened to the world during his long imprisonment, how much time had passed, and what force could have wrought such change, turning the vibrant land he remembered into this blighted waste. A rustling in the nearby underbrush snapped Wukong from his reverie. He dropped into a defensive crouch, cursing the absence of his staff. A moment later, a small furry creature emerged, a rabbit, but unlike any Wukong had ever seen. Its fur was patchy and discoloured, and an extra eye blinked at him from the centre of its forehead. "Well, hello there, little oddity," Wukong murmured, cocking his head to the side. "What manner of being are you?" The rabbit twitched its nose, regarding Wukong with what seemed like equal curiosity. Then, without warning, it opened its mouth, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. A high-pitched shriek erupted from its throat, echoing across the barren landscape. Wukong stumbled backward, his eyes wide with shock. "By all the gods," he breathed, "what madness is this?" The rabbit's shriek was answered by other cries, these deeper and more menacing. The ground began to tremble once more, but this was no natural earthquake. It was the sound of something large, many large somethings approaching rapidly. Survival instinct kicked in. Without his powers, without his weapon, Wukong knew he was in no condition to face whatever monstrosities this altered world might hold. He turned and ran, his muscles protesting after centuries of disuse. As he fled, leaping over twisted roots and ducking beneath gnarled branches, Wukong's mind raced. This was not the world he had known. Something fundamental had shifted during his imprisonment, something that went beyond the natural order of things. And yet, a small part of him thrilled at the challenge. He was Sun Wukong, after all. He had been born from stone, had stolen immortality from the gods themselves. If he had to claw his way back to power in this new, twisted reality, then so be it. A fierce grin spread across Wukong's face as he ran, the sounds of pursuit growing ever closer behind him. "Very well," he muttered to himself, to the universe at large. "You want to play rough? Let's play." With that, the Monkey King plunged deeper into the unknown, leaving behind the shattered remnants of his prison. Behind him, the mountain that had held him for so long crumbled, its purpose fulfilled. And as the dust settled, a new chapter in the legend of Sun Wukong began to unfold. The once great immortal was now little more than a common monkey, lost in a world gone mad. But in his eyes burned the same indomitable spirit that had once challenged heaven itself. Wukong was awake, and the realms, both celestial and mortal, would soon remember why that was such a terrifying prospect. Chapter 3. The Mountain of Memories. The twisted landscape blurred around Sun Wukong as he ran, his bare feet barely touching the blighted earth. He had long since lost track of his pursuers, their monstrous cries fading into the distance, but still he pushed onward. Without his divine powers, without his staff, Wukong knew he was vulnerable in this changed world. It was only when his legs finally gave out, muscles burning with exhaustion, that he allowed himself to stop. Collapsing beneath the withered branches of what might once have been a mighty oak, Wukong gasped for breath, his chest heaving. As his pulse slowly steadied, Wukong took in his surroundings. The sickly yellow sky had darkened to a deep, bruised purple, stars peeking through like distant cold eyes. The landscape was a maze of twisted vegetation and eroded stone, unrecognizable from the lush forests and proud mountains he remembered. And yet, there was something familiar about the lay of the land, something that tugged at the edges of Wukong's memory. Rising unsteadily to his feet, the Monkey King squinted into the gloom. In the distance, barely visible in the fading light, a jagged peak rose above the desolation. Its proud slopes were now pitted and scarred, its once verdant forests reduced to skeletal remnants, but Wukong would know that silhouette anywhere. "Mount Wukong," he whispered, his voice a mixture of reverence and disbelief. His birthplace, his home. Without conscious thought, Wukong began to move towards the mountain. Each step brought a flood of memories, vivid flashes of a life that now seemed impossibly distant. He saw himself as a newborn, bursting forth from a stone egg atop the mountain's highest peak, his first cry of defiance echoing across the realm. He remembered the carefree days of his youth, swinging through lush forests with his monkey kin, mastering the art of somersaults and practical jokes in equal measure. He felt again the burning curiosity that had driven him to seek out human civilization, to learn their ways and their magics, always pushing against the boundaries of what a mere monkey should be capable of. As Wukong approached the base of Mount Wukong, the contrast between memory and reality became painfully stark. The once verdant slopes were now bare rock, scored with deep gashes as if some giant beast had raked its claws across the mountain's face. The famous waterfall that had concealed the water curtain cave, Wukong's old hideout, was reduced to a sickly trickle, the water an unnatural, luminescent green. "What happened here?" Wukong murmured, reaching out to touch the scarred stone. What force could have? His words cut off as his hand made contact with the mountain. A jolt of energy surged through him, familiar yet alien, like hearing a beloved song played in a discordant key. Wukong stumbled back, his fur standing on end. "Well," he said, a humorless grin spreading across his face, "that's new." Steeling himself, Wukong placed his hand on the rock once more. This time he was prepared for the surge of energy. He closed his eyes, focusing on the sensation, trying to make sense of the chaotic impressions flooding his mind. Images flashed behind his eyelids, too quick to fully comprehend. He caught glimpses of great battles, of celestial forces clashing with creatures of nightmare. He saw Mount Huago standing strong against waves of corruption, its innate magic a beacon of resistance. And then, finally, he saw its fall, a cataclysmic event that shattered the mountain's power and scarred the land for miles around. With a gasp, Wukong broke the connection. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the vision and the realization of just how much had changed during his imprisonment. As he knelt there, trying to process what he had seen, a glint of light caught his eye. Half buried in the ashen soil at the mountain's base was a small object, its surface reflecting the sickly starlight. Curious, Wukong reached out and plucked it from the ground. It was a fragment of stone no larger than a peach pit, but it thrummed with power. As Wukong turned it over in his hands, he felt a resonance deep within his being. As if a part of himself he hadn't known was missing had suddenly clicked back into place. "Well, hello there," Wukong murmured, bringing the stone fragment closer to his face. "And what might you be?" As if in response to his question, the fragment pulsed with golden light. In that brief illumination, Wukong caught a glimpse of his reflection in its polished surface. For a moment, he saw not the bedraggled, powerless creature he had become, but an echo of his former glory, the great sage equal to heaven, resplendent in divine armor, eyes blazing with celestial fire. The vision faded as quickly as it had appeared, but its impact lingered. Wukong felt a stirring of hope, a spark of his old defiant spirit reigniting. "A piece of the puzzle," he mused, pocketing the stone fragment. "But how many more are there, I wonder? And what picture will they form when assembled?" A cool breeze swept down from the heights of Mount Huago, carrying with it the faintest whisper of a voice. Wukong's ears twitched, straining to catch the words. It was like trying to recall a half-remembered dream, but slowly, understanding dawned. "6," he said aloud, the word feeling right on his tongue. 6 fragments, 6 relics of what? Of me. The idea should have been absurd, but after all he had seen and experienced, Wukong was willing to entertain even the wildest possibilities. If this small stone could resonate so strongly with his essence, what might 6 such fragments do when brought together? Could they be the key to restoring his powers? To understanding what had happened to the world during his long imprisonment, to reclaiming his place in the celestial hierarchy? A slow grin spread across Wukong's face, a shadow of his old mischievous smirk. "Well then," he said, addressing the battered mountain and the blighted world beyond, "it seems I have a new quest. Now watch out, universe, the Monkey King is back in the game." With one last look at the ruins of his former home, Wukong turned and began to walk away from Mount Huago. He had no idea where to find the other 5 fragments, no plan beyond putting one foot in front of the other. But for the first time since awakening in this changed world, he felt a sense of purpose. Let the Jade Emperor and all the celestial court tremble, he thought. Let the forces that had ravaged the land beware. Sun Wukong was awake, and he would not rest until he had put the pieces back together, the pieces of the world and the pieces of himself. As he ventured into the unknown, the stone fragment pulsed warmly in his pocket, a constant reminder of the power that lay dormant within him. And high above, in the twisted remnants of Mount Huago's peak, a lone monkey watched his departure, its eyes glowing with an intelligence that spoke of mysteries yet to be unravelled. The journey of the Monkey King had truly begun. Chapter 4. The Rat Sage's Warning. The path to Black Wind Mountain was treacherous, winding through a landscape that seemed to actively resist Sun Wukong's progress. Thorny vines writhed across his path, seeking to ensnare his feet. The very air grew thick and oppressive as he ascended, carrying whispers that spoke of ancient grudges and forgotten terrors. But Wukong pressed on, driven by an instinct he couldn't quite name. The fragment of stone pulsed warmly in his pocket, seeming to guide him towards something, someone. As he neared the summit, the sickly yellow sky darkened to an inky black, shot through with veins of ominous red. The wind picked up, howling around the jagged peaks with a voice that sounded almost human. Almost, but not quite. "Well," Wukong muttered, his fur standing on end, "they certainly named you appropriately, didn't they, Black Wind Mountain?" A sharp crack split the air, like the snapping of a massive bone. Wukong whirled, dropping into a defensive crouch, cursing once again the absence of his staff. But instead of some monstrous attacker, he found himself face to face with a rat. The creature was unlike any rodent Wukong had ever seen. It stood nearly as tall as his knee, its fur a shimmering silver that seemed to absorb and reflect the eerie light. Most striking were its eyes, deep liquid pools of wisdom that spoke of centuries of accumulated knowledge. "Sun Wukong," the rat spoke, its voice surprisingly mellifluous for such a small creature. "The great sage equal to heaven, although," it cocked its head, whiskers twitching, "perhaps not so equal anymore." Wukong straightened, his eyes narrowing. "You have me at a disadvantage, little one. You know my name, but I don't believe we've been introduced." The rat inclined its head in what might have been a bow. "I am known by many names, but you may call me the Rat Sage. I am the keeper of Black Wind Mountain, and the one you seek, though you may not have known it." "The one I seek." Wukong's hand unconsciously moved to the pocket containing the stone fragment. "And how would you know that?" The rat sage's whiskers twitched in what might have been amusement. "I know many things, Monkey King. The winds bring me secrets from across all realms. I have watched your awakening with great interest." Wukong's eyes narrowed. "You've been spying on me." "Observing," the rat sage corrected. "There is a difference. Come, we have much to discuss, and this mountaintop is no place for lengthy conversation. Follow me, if you wish to learn of the great threat that looms over all realms." Without waiting for a response, the rat sage turned and scampered towards a crevice in the rock face. Wukong hesitated for a moment, his natural suspicion warring with his burning curiosity. In the end, curiosity won out. With a shrug, he followed the enigmatic rodent into the mountain. The narrow passage quickly opened into a vast cavern, its walls glittering with bioluminescent fungi that cast everything in an ethereal blue glow. At the center stood a gnarled tree, its branches bare yet somehow still alive, stretching towards a ceiling lost in darkness. The rat sage scurried up the tree's trunk, settling onto a low-hanging branch. It gestured for Wukong to make himself comfortable. "Now then," the sage began, its tone grave, "I'm sure you have many questions about the state of the world, about your imprisonment, about the fragment you carry. But before we address those, you must understand the greater threat that looms over us all. Have you heard of the Yai?" Wukong shook his head, leaning against the base of the tree. "Can't say that I have. Some new uppity demon causing trouble." The rat sage's whiskers drooped. "If only it were so simple. The Yai is not a singular entity, Monkey King. It is a force, a corruption that seeks to unravel the very fabric of reality. It is chaos incarnate, the antithesis of the cosmic order you once swore to protect, and later rebelled against." Wukong's brow furrowed. "A force that can corrupt reality itself. That sounds, well, frankly, it sounds impossible. And yet," the rat sage countered, "look at the world around you. The twisted landscapes, the monstrous creatures, the sickening of the very sky above. All of this is the work of the Yai. It has been growing in power for centuries, taking advantage of the cosmic imbalance caused by your imprisonment. My imprisonment? Wukong's voice was sharp. Are you saying this is my fault? The rat sage shook its head. Not directly, no. But your rebellion against heaven and the subsequent punishment created ripples in the cosmic order. The Yai found those cracks and began to seep through. And now, with the barriers between realms weakened, it threatens to consume everything, mortal world and celestial court alike. Wukong was silent for a long moment, processing this information. Finally he asked, "And what does this have to do with me?" "In case you hadn't noticed, I'm not exactly in fighting shape at the moment." The rat sage's eyes glimmered in the ethereal light. "Ah, but that's where the fragment comes in. The 6 relics of the stone monkey of Yu Wukong, they are keys to restoring the cosmic balance. Each contains a portion of your original power, yes, but more importantly, they are focal points of order in a world descending into chaos." Wukong pulled out the stone fragment, watching as it pulsed with warm light. "And if I gather all 6, then you may stand a chance against the Yai," the rat sage said solemnly. "But make no mistake, Monkey King. This quest is not about reclaiming your former glory or settling old scores with heaven. The fate of all realms hangs in the balance. The question is, are you willing to be a protector once more rather than a rebel?" Wukong stared at the fragment in his hand, memories of his past deeds, both heroic and destructive, flashing through his mind. When he looked up, there was a new resolve in his golden eyes. "I was born from stone," he said, his voice low and determined. "I've withstood the punishments of heaven and the passage of eons. If this Yai thinks it can unravel me along with reality, it's in for one hell of a surprise."
The rat sage nodded, a glimmer of hope in its ancient eyes.
"Then listen well, son Wukong, for the path ahead is fraught with danger. The remaining fragments are scattered across realms both mortal and divine. Powerful forces will seek to stop you, some corrupted by the Yai, others fearing the return of your full power." As the rat sage began to outline the perilous quest ahead, Wukong felt a familiar stirring in his chest, the thrill of a challenge worthy of his skills. He may not have his divine powers, he may not have his staff, but he was still son Wukong, and the universe, it seemed, had not yet learned its lesson about underestimating a simple monkey. The warnings of the rat sage echoed in the vast cavern, painting a picture of a world on the brink of annihilation. But with each word, Wukong's determination grew. The Monkey King was back in the game, and this time he wasn't just playing for his own amusement. The very fabric of reality was at stake. As he listened and planned, the stone fragment pulsed steadily in Wukong's hand, a beacon of hope in the face of cosmic darkness. The journey ahead would be long and perilous, but for the first time since his awakening, Son Wukong felt truly alive. The greatest adventure of his long and storied existence was about to begin. Chapter 5, Trials of the Flaming Mountains. The horizon burned. Son Wukong stood at the edge of a vast, scorched plain, his eyes fixed on the inferno that lay before him. The flaming mountains lived up to their name, great peaks of fire stretching towards the sickly sky. Rivers of lava carved paths down their slopes, pooling into lakes of liquid fire at their bases. The very air shimmered with heat, distorting Wukong's vision and making the mountains seem to dance in a hellish mirage. "Well," Wukong muttered, wiping sweat from his brow, "this looks inviting." The stone fragment in his pocket pulsed with increased warmth, almost uncomfortably hot against his fur. There was no doubt one of the 6 relics lay somewhere within that blazing range. Wukong took a deep breath, immediately regretting it as the superheated air seared his lungs. He coughed, a rueful grin spreading across his face. "Right then, into the fire we go." With that, the Monkey King began his trek across the charred plain. Each step kicked up ash that clung to his fur, slowly turning his once golden coat a dull grey. The ground beneath his feet was uncomfortably warm, and in places the rocky surface had melted into black glass that reflected the flames above. As he neared the base of the mountains, Wukong's keen ears picked up an unsettling sound beneath the constant roar of the flames. It was a high-pitched keening, almost like laughter. "Who's there?" Wukong called out, dropping into a defensive crouch. "Show yourself." The laughter grew louder, and suddenly the air around Wukong erupted into flame. From the fire emerged creatures unlike anything he had ever seen. They were vaguely humanoid in shape, but their bodies were composed entirely of living flame. Their eyes glowed like hot coals, and when they opened their mouths to speak, Wukong could see the inferno that raged within them. "Look, brothers." One of the fire demons cackled. "A little monkey has wandered into our domain. How delicious!" Wukong's mind raced. Without his staff, without his full powers, he was at a severe disadvantage against these creatures of pure flame. But he was still Sun Wukong, and if there was one thing he excelled at, it was thinking on his feet. Delicious. Wukong scoffed, puffing out his chest. "I'll have you know I'm quite indigestible. Stringy, gamey, terrible aftertaste. You really don't want to eat me." The fire demons paused, confused by this unexpected response. Wukong seized the moment of hesitation. "In fact," he continued, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone, "I'm here on a secret mission. Very hush-hush, you understand. Direct orders from, the Lord of Cinders himself." The demons exchanged glances, their flames flickering with uncertainty. "The Lord of Cinders?" one asked. "We've never heard of such a being." Wukong's eyes widened in mock surprise. "Never heard of? Why, he's only the most powerful fire entity in all the realms. Surely you jest." He leaned in close, lowering his voice. "Unless, oh my, don't tell me you've been slacking in your duties. Tisk. The Lord of Cinders will not be pleased to hear this." Panic began to spread among the fire demons. They huddled together, whispering frantically in voices that sounded like the crackling of burning wood. Wukong struggled to keep a straight face, marveling at how, even in this changed world, some things remained the same, like the gullibility of minor demons. Finally, the lead demon turned back to Wukong. "We apologize for our ignorance, esteemed messenger. Please, allow us to escort you safely through our domain. We wouldn't want to impede the Lord of Cinders' important work." Wukong bowed with exaggerated formality. "Your cooperation is noted and will be reported. Lead on, good. Flame fellows." As the fire demons began to guide him up the treacherous slopes of the flaming mountains, Wukong allowed himself a small satisfied smirk. He may not have his divine powers, but his wit was as sharp as ever. The journey through the flaming mountains was arduous, even with the fire demons clearing a path. The heat was oppressive, and more than once Wukong had to leap to safety as the ground beneath his feet suddenly gave way to reveal a pool of bubbling lava. But slowly, steadily they ascended. As they climbed higher, Wukong began to notice a change. The constant burn of the fragment in his pocket grew more intense, yes, but there was something else. A tingling sensation spread through his body, a familiar power that he hadn't felt since his awakening. Curious, Wukong focused on that sensation. He thought of cool water, of soothing rivers and gentle rains, and to his amazement he felt his form begin to shift. It wasn't the instantaneous, complete transformation he had once been capable of, but it was something. His fur became sleek and water-repellent, his hands and feet webbed. He had taken on aspects of a river otter, an animal well-suited to resisting heat. The fire demons, focused on the path ahead, didn't notice the change. Wukong grinned, reveling in this small taste of his old abilities. It wasn't much, but it was a start, and in this infernal environment, every little bit helped. Finally, after what felt like hours of climbing, they reached a plateau near the summit. There, in the center of a ring of eternal flame, stood a small altar, and upon that altar, glowing with an inner fire that put the surrounding inferno to shame, was a second fragment of stone. Wukong's heart leaped. He had found the second relic, but before he could move towards it, the lead fire demon turned to him, suspicion finally overtaking its fear. "Wait!" it growled, flames flaring. "If you're truly a messenger of the Lord of Cinders, prove it. Take the sacred flame into your hands." Wukong froze. His partial transformation might offer some protection against the heat, but to actually touch the flames, that was another matter entirely. For a moment he considered simply making a run for the relic, but surrounded by fire demons with no clear escape route, the odds weren't in his favor. Time for another trick, then. Wukong straightened, drawing himself up to his full height. He fixed the fire demon with a steely gaze, channeling every ounce of royal arrogance he had observed in the Jade Emperor. "You dare," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You dare to question my authority, to demand proof from an emissary of the Lord of Cinders himself." The fire demon faltered, its flames dimming slightly. Wukong pressed his advantage. "I ought to extinguish you where you stand for such insolence," he roared. "But I am merciful. I will overlook this transgression, but only if you and your brethren leave this place immediately. The business I conduct here is for fire entities far above your station to comprehend." For a tense moment, Wukong thought the bluff might not work. The fire demons wavered, glancing between him and the altar. But then, with a collective wail of terror, they fled, streaming down the mountainside like living comets. Wukong waited until their cries had faded, before letting out a long, relieved breath. "Well," he chuckled, "that was a bit too close for comfort." Turning back to the altar, Wukong approached cautiously. The heat was incredible, threatening to overwhelm even his partially transformed state. But the pull of the relic was undeniable. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Wukong reached out and grasped the glowing stone fragment. The moment his fingers closed around it, a surge of power coursed through him. It was like being struck by lightning and doused in cool water at the same time. Wukong gasped, feeling strength flood back into his limbs. The partial transformation solidified, then expanded. In the span of a heartbeat, he shifted from monkey to otter to eagle to tiger and back again, each form perfect and held for just an instant. As the rush of power subsided, Wukong found himself once again in his natural form, but changed. His fur shone with its old luster, and the constant ache of weakened muscles had vanished. He wasn't back to his full strength, not by a long shot, but it was a significant improvement. Grinning broadly, Wukong pocketed the new fragment alongside the first. 2 down, 4 to go. But as he turned to begin the treacherous descent from the flaming mountains, a distant roar reached his ears. It seemed the fire demons had realized they'd been tricked, and they were returning in force. Wukong's grin turned feral. Let them come. The Monkey King had recovered a fraction of his old power, and he was itching to take it for a proper test drive. As the first wave of enraged fire demons crested the plateau, Wukong launched himself into the air, his form shimmering and changing. The great sage, equal to heaven, might not be back to his full glory just yet, but he was one step closer. And the realms, both celestial and infernal, would soon remember why that was such a terrifying prospect. The battle for the flaming mountains had begun. Chapter 6, Echoes of the Past. The scent of ash and old magic hung heavy in the air as Sun Wukong crested the final hill. Before him stretched a vast plain, littered with the broken remnants of what had once been a mighty civilization. Crumbling towers reached toward the sky like grasping fingers, their once gleaming surfaces now dull and pockmarked. Streets that had bustled with life lay silent, choked with debris and overgrown with twisted vegetation. Wukong's steps faltered as recognition dawned. "No," he whispered, golden eyes wide with disbelief. It can't be, but it was. This ruined expanse was all that remained of the kingdom of Huashu, a realm he had laid waste to centuries ago in one of his more infamous rampages. As Wukong picked his way through the desolate streets, memories assaulted him with every step. There, beneath that fallen arch, he had swatted aside royal guards like they were nothing more than annoying flies. In that square, now little more than a crater, he had called down lightning from clear skies, laughing at the mortal's terror. And there, atop the highest remaining spire of the once majestic palace he had, Wukong shook his head violently, trying to dislodge the memory. But it clung to him like a persistent spectre, refusing to be banished. Princess Fair Fox, her 9 tails spread wide, defiant to the last, her eyes burning with a mixture of fear and contempt. Her final words hurled at him like daggers as he prepared to strike. "You are no king, Sun Wukong. You are a monster." "I was different then," Wukong muttered, though the words rang hollow even to his own ears. "I was. A tyrant, a destroyer, a being of pure chaos." The voice, young and bitter, cut through Wukong's reverie like a blade. He spun, dropping into a defensive crouch, only to find himself face to face with a child. No, not quite a child. As Wukong's eyes adjusted, he saw that the figure before him was a young woman, barely out of adolescence. She had the lithe form and pointed ears of a fox spirit, but her features were sharp, almost bovine. Most striking were her eyes, a swirling mixture of vulpine cunning and bovine stubbornness. Wukong's breath caught in his throat. He knew those eyes. "Who are you?" he demanded, though a part of him already feared the answer. The young woman lifted her chin defiantly. "I am Ping Ping, daughter of the Bull King and Princess Fair Fox, and you, Sun Wukong, are the monster who murdered my mother." The words hit Wukong like a physical blow. He staggered back, shaking his head. "No, that's impossible. The battle with Fair Fox was centuries ago. You couldn't possibly be alive." Ping Ping's laugh was harsh, devoid of humour. "Oh, the perks of divine heritage. We age slowly, Monkey King. Slowly enough to carry the weight of grief and the burning desire for vengeance across eons." Wukong's mind reeled. The Bull King and Princess Fair Fox had been among his greatest adversaries, yes, but also something more. There had been a complexity to their relationship, a grudging respect beneath the enmity. To see their legacy standing before him, a living reminder of his past misdeeds, was almost too much to bear. Wukong began, then faltered. What could he possibly say? "I'm sorry" seemed woefully inadequate in the face of such destruction, such loss. Ping Ping's eyes narrowed. "Save your apologies, Monkey King. I'm not interested in your regrets or your excuses. I'm here because, loath as I am to admit it, I need your help." Wukong blinked, taken aback. "My help? With what?" "My father," Ping Ping said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "The Bull King, he's not himself. Ever since the Yai corruption began to spread, he's been changing, becoming more volatile, more destructive. I fear he may be lost to the madness entirely if something isn't done soon." Wukong's brow furrowed. "And you think I can help? In case you hadn't noticed, I'm not exactly at full power these days." Ping Ping's gaze flicked to the pocket where Wukong kept the 2 relic fragments, her expression unreadable. "I've heard whispers of your quest, Monkey King, of the 6 relics that could restore your power. My father. He knows things, ancient secrets about the nature of divine essence. If anyone can help you unlock the full potential of those fragments, it's him. And in return, you want me to what? Save him from this Yai corruption. Ping Ping nodded, her eyes burning with a desperate intensity. He's all I have left. I can't lose him too. Wukong was silent for a long moment, his gaze sweeping across the ruined landscape. The weight of his past actions pressed down upon him, as tangible as the crumbling stones beneath his feet. Finally he met Ping Ping's eyes. I can't undo what I've done, he said softly. I can't bring back your mother or restore this kingdom. But if there's a chance I can help your father, a chance to set right even a fraction of the wrongs I've committed, then I'll do it. Ping Ping studied him, searching for any sign of deception. Whatever she saw in Wukong's face must have satisfied her, for she gave a curt nod. Very well, she said. But understand this, Monkey King. I am not your friend. I am not your ally. I am merely someone whose goals temporarily align with yours. Betray me, and I will make you wish you were still imprisoned beneath that mountain. Wukong couldn't help but smile, a hint of his old mischievous spirit peeking through. You know, you remind me a lot of your mother. She never took any of my nonsense either. For a moment, Ping Ping's stern facade cracked, a flicker of pain and longing crossing her features. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by her usual mask of determination. Come, she said, turning away. We have a long journey ahead of us, and time is not on our side. As Ping Ping began to pick her way through the ruins, Wukong cast one last look at the devastated kingdom. The echoes of his past misdeeds seemed to whisper on the wind, a constant reminder of the chaos he had once revelled in. But there was something else there too, a faint glimmer of possibility. Perhaps this quest wasn't just about regaining his powers or saving the realms from the Yai threat. Perhaps it was also a chance for redemption, an opportunity to become the protector he should have been all along. With a deep breath, Wukong turned and followed Ping Ping into the unknown. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but for the first time in eons, the Monkey King felt the stirring of something he had long thought lost. Hope. As they left the ruined kingdom behind, neither Wukong nor Ping Ping noticed the shadowy figure watching from atop a crumbling tower. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and when it smiled, rows of needle-sharp teeth gleamed in the fading light. The Yai's corruption spread, and the hunt for the remaining relics had truly begun. Chapter 7. The Bull King's Challenge. The celestial pastures stretched out before them, a mockery of their former glory. Where once verdant fields had swayed beneath an eternally blue sky, now only sickly yellow grass remained, rustling ominously in a wind that carried the scent of decay. Sun Wukong and Ping Ping crouched behind a withered hedge, surveying the blighted landscape. In the distance, a massive figure lumbered across the dying fields, its movements erratic and purposeless. "Is that?" Wukong began, squinting against the hazy light. Ping Ping nodded, her expression a mixture of sorrow and determination. "Yes, that's my father, or what's left of him." The Bull King had always been an impressive figure, but the being before them was something else entirely. He stood easily 20 feet tall, his muscular frame twisted and warped by the Yai's corruption. Patches of his hide oozed a sickly green substance, while others were covered in hard, crystalline growths. Most disturbing were his eyes. Once a warm brown, they now glowed with an unnatural purple light. Wukong felt a pang of, was it guilt? Regret? It was hard to reconcile this pitiful creature with the proud warrior he had once fought, the devoted husband of Princess Fair Fox. "He doesn't look like he's in a particularly chatty mood," Wukong observed, trying to keep his tone light. "Any ideas on how we approach him without getting trampled or gored?" Ping Ping shot him a withering glare. "This isn't a joke, Monkey King. That's my father out there, lost in madness. We need to," Her words were cut off by a bone-chilling roar. The Bull King had stopped his aimless wandering and was now staring directly at their hiding spot, nostrils flaring. "Well," Wukong muttered, "I suppose that solves the approach problem." With a speed belying his massive size, the corrupted Bull King charged towards them. Wukong grabbed Ping Ping and leapt clear just as their cover was reduced to splinters beneath the Bull King's hooves. "Father," Ping Ping cried out as they landed, "please, it's me, it's your daughter." For a moment the Bull King hesitated, a flicker of recognition passing through his glowing eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a mindless rage. "Right then," Wukong said, gently pushing Ping Ping behind him. "Looks like we're doing this the hard way. Stay back, kid. Your old man and I have some catching up to do." As the Bull King lowered his head for another charge, Wukong reached deep within himself, calling upon the power of the 2 relic fragments he carried. He felt the familiar tingle of transformation and willed himself to take on an aspect of the earth itself, solid, immovable. His fur hardened into something resembling stone just as the Bull King's horns slammed into him. The impact was tremendous, sending shockwaves through the ground, but Wukong held firm, his feet sinking inches into the soil as he grappled with the much larger opponent. "Come on, you old ox," Wukong grunted, straining against the Bull King's immense strength. "I know you're in there somewhere. Remember who you are."
The only response was another enraged bellow. The Bull King reared back, preparing to bring his full weight down on Wukong.
Thinking quickly, Wukong shifted again, taking on aspects of the wind. He became light, almost insubstantial, slipping away just as the Bull King's hooves crashed down where he had been standing. "You're going to have to do better than that," Wukong taunted, dancing just out of reach. "I've seen drunken earth spirits with better aim." As he darted and weaved around the Bull King's attacks, Wukong's mind raced. Brute force clearly wasn't going to work. Even with the power boost from the relics, he was no match for the Bull King's corrupted strength. He needed to find a way to reach whatever was left of his old rival's mind. "Ping Ping!" he called out. "Talk to him. Remind him of who he was, of your mother." Ping Ping, who had been watching the battle with wide eyes, startled at Wukong's words. Then, steeling herself, she stepped forward. "Father," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Father, please listen. Remember the stories you used to tell me? About your grand adventures, about how you met Mother."
The Bull King paused in his assault, his head tilting as if straining to hear.
Encouraged, Ping Ping continued, her voice growing stronger. "Remember the night sky over the celestial river, where you and Mother would dance among the stars? Remember the promises you made to always protect our family, our realm." A shudder ran through the Bull King's massive frame. He shook his head violently, as if trying to dislodge an irritating thought. Wukong saw his opening. With a quick transformation into a form with enhanced speed, he dashed forward, leaping onto the Bull King's back. Before the corrupted deity could react, Wukong pressed his palms against the Bull King's temples. "Remember," Wukong shouted, channeling every ounce of power he could muster into the connection. "Remember, fair fox? Remember your love, your pride, your honor." Images flashed through Wukong's mind, memories not his own, but the Bull King's. He saw Fair Fox as she once was, beautiful and fierce, her 9 tails spread wide as she laughed beneath a starry sky. He felt the Bull King's love, his devotion, his anguish at her loss. And beneath it all, a current of bitter hatred. Hatred for the one who had taken her away. Hatred for me, Wukong whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "It's me! I'm the anchor for the Yai's corruption." The Bull King bellowed, a sound of pure anguish, and bucked wildly. Wukong went flying, slamming into the ground hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. As he struggled to his feet, he saw the Bull King advancing on him, eyes blazing with recognition and fury. "You!" the Bull King growled. his voice a horrifying mixture of bestial rage and all too human pain. "You took her from me. You destroyed everything." Wukong didn't try to dodge this time. He stood his ground, arms spread wide. "You're right," he said softly. "I did, and I'm sorry, more sorry than you can ever know." The Bull King raised a massive fist ready to crush the Monkey King where he stood, but before he could strike, Ping Ping darted between them. "No," she cried, arms outstretched. "Father, please, this isn't you. The Yai is twisting your grief, your anger. But if you do this, if you kill him, you'll be lost forever, and I'll have lost both my parents." For a long, tense moment, the Bull King stood frozen, fist raised. Then, slowly, the unnatural glow began to fade from his eyes. The crystalline growths on his hide cracked and fell away. With a sound like a mountain sighing, he sank to his knees. "Ping Ping," he rumbled, his voice rough but recognizably his own. "My little calf. What have I done?" As Ping Ping rushed to embrace her father, Wukong hung back, feeling like an intruder on this intimate moment. But the Bull King's gaze found him over his daughter's shoulder. "Son Wukong," he said, his tone unreadable. "It seems I owe you a debt." Wukong shook his head. "No. If anything, I'm the one who owes a debt. One I can never fully repay." The Bull King was silent for a long moment. Then, with a heavy sigh, he said, "Perhaps. But dwelling on past wrongs will not undo them. The Yai is the true enemy now, and if what I sensed of your power is true, you may be our best hope of stopping it." Wukong blinked, surprised by this turn.
"Then you'll help us. You'll share what you know about the relics."
The Bull King nodded solemnly. "I will. But be warned, Monkey King. The path to unlocking their full potential is fraught with danger. It will require you to confront not just external foes, but the darkness within yourself."
As the sun began to set over the celestial pastures, casting long shadows across the blighted landscape,
Wukong felt a mix of emotions he couldn't quite name. Relief at averting disaster, guilt over his past actions, and a growing sense of trepidation about the trials yet to come. But as he watched Ping Ping fuss over her father, he also felt something else. A sense of purpose, of rightness. For the first time in eons, Sun Wukong wasn't fighting for his own glory or amusement. He was fighting for something greater, for redemption, for the chance to protect rather than destroy. The Monkey King squared his shoulders, a determined glint in his golden eyes. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever darkness he had to face, he would meet them head-on. For Fair Fox, for the Bull King, for Ping Ping, for all the realms he had once thoughtlessly endangered, the true quest was only just beginning. Chapter 8. Descent into the Underworld. The entrance to the Underworld yawned before them, a gaping maw in the side of a desolate mountain. Mist curled around their feet, carrying whispers of forgotten souls and ancient regrets. Sun Wukong stood at the threshold, the Bull King and Ping Ping flanking him on either side. "You're sure about this?" Wukong asked, his usual bravado tempered by the gravity of their mission. The Bull King nodded solemnly. "The Yai's corruption runs deep. Though you've freed my mind and body, a part of my soul remains tainted, trapped in the realm of the dead. To fully break free, to be of true help to you and to our world, that fragment must be reclaimed." Ping Ping stepped forward, her face set with determination. "I'm coming with you." "No," both Wukong and the Bull King said in unison, then glanced at each other in surprise. The Bull King continued, his voice gentle but firm. "My brave little calf, this journey is too perilous. The Underworld is no place for the living, especially one as young as you." "But," Ping Ping began to protest. Wukong laid a hand on her shoulder. "Your father's right, kid. Besides, someone needs to stay here and make sure he doesn't relapse into a rampaging monster while I'm gone." He winked, trying to lighten the mood. Ping Ping scowled but didn't argue further. "Fine," But you'd better both come back in one piece, or I'll find a way to drag you out of the underworld myself." With a final nod to the Bull King and a reassuring smile to Ping Ping, Wukong stepped into the darkness. The moment he crossed the threshold, the world around him shifted. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on him like a physical weight. Ghostly lights flickered in the distance, illuminating a landscape of twisted rock and gnarled, leafless trees. "Well," Wukong muttered to himself, "this is cheerful." He began to make his way deeper into the underworld, every sense on high alert. The relic fragments in his pocket pulsed with warmth, their power seemingly amplified in this realm of death and shadow. As he travelled, vague shapes began to coalesce in the mist around him. At first, Wukong thought they were simply more features of the bizarre landscape. But as he drew closer, he realized with a start that they were faces, hundreds, thousands of faces, all staring at him with hollow eyes. "Sun Wukong," the faces whispered in unison, their voices a discordant chorus. "The great sage equal to heaven, the destroyer, the trickster, the murderer." Wukong's steps faltered. "First, I don't. Remember us," the voices hissed. "We remember you." The mist swirled, and suddenly Wukong was surrounded by vivid scenes from his past. He saw cities burning, mountains crumbling, armies scattered like leaves in a storm, and at the center of each catastrophe, a golden-furred figure laughing with mad glee. "No," Wukong growled, squeezing his eyes shut. "That's not who I am anymore. I've changed." "Have you?" The voices seemed to come from inside his own head now. "Or are you simply playing another trick, great sage? How long before you tire of this game of redemption and return to your true nature?" Wukong's hands clenched into fists, his whole body trembling with the effort of resisting the underworld's influence. "I am more than my past," he ground out. "I am more than my mistakes." He forced his eyes open, glaring defiantly at the accusing faces. "I can't undo what I've done. But I can choose who I am now, who I will be in the future. And I choose to be better." For a moment the voices fell silent. Then slowly the mist began to recede. The faces faded, leaving behind a single path leading deeper into the underworld. Wukong took a deep breath, centering himself. He knew this was only the first of many trials he would face here. But he also knew that each challenge overcome, each temptation resisted, brought him one step closer to true redemption. With renewed determination he pressed on. The path led Wukong to the shores of a vast black river. Its waters moved sluggishly, occasionally breaking into eddies as unseen things stirred beneath the surface. On the far bank, barely visible through the gloom, stood a towering palace of obsidian and bone. "Well, if I were a corrupted soul fragment, that's definitely where I'd hang out," Wukong mused. As he pondered how to cross the treacherous-looking river, a sound reached his ears, the rhythmic splash of oars. Through the mist glided a small boat, piloted by a hooded figure. The boat drew up to the shore, and the ferryman turned its hidden face towards Wukong. When it spoke, its voice was like dry leaves rustling in a graveyard. "Payment," it rasped. Wukong patted his pockets theatrically. "Sorry, fresh out of coin. Don't suppose you'd accept an IOU from the Monkey King?" The ferryman remained motionless, clearly unamused. Sighing, Wukong reached for one of the relic fragments. "Look, this is really important. I need to get to that palace to save a friend's soul. Surely we can come to some arrangement." The hooded figure tilted its head, considering. Then, with movements as smooth as flowing water, it reached out and plucked a single hair from Wukong's head. "Hey," Wukong yelped. "What's the big idea?" "Payment," the ferryman repeated, tucking the hair into its robes. "A fragment of the living to ferry a fragment of the dead." Wukong rubbed his head, frowning. "I don't suppose you'd care to elaborate on that cryptic bit of—" But the ferryman had already turned away, gesturing for Wukong to board the boat. Shrugging, the Monkey King stepped aboard, and they set off across the dark waters. As they neared the far shore, the obsidian palace loomed larger and larger. Wukong could now make out intricate carvings covering its surface, scenes of torment and despair, of souls lost in eternal suffering. "Definitely the most cheerful place I've ever broken into," Wukong muttered. The boat bumped gently against the shore, and Wukong disembarked. He turned to thank the ferryman, only to find that both boat and pilot had vanished without a trace. "Right," Wukong said, squaring his shoulders. "Onward to the creepy Palace of Doom." As he approached the towering gates, Wukong felt a familiar presence. It was similar to the corrupted Bull King he had faced in the celestial pastures, but distilled, purified into something even more potent. The gates swung open of their own accord, releasing a blast of cold air that carried the scent of ancient magic and fresh despair. Wukong steeled himself and stepped inside. The interior of the palace was a maze of shadowy corridors and cavernous halls. Ghostly flames flickered in sconces, casting more shadows than light. As Wukong made his way deeper into the structure, he became aware of a sound, a low, mournful bellowing that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Hang on, old friend," Wukong murmured. "I'm coming." Finally, he emerged into a vast central chamber. There, suspended in mid-air by chains of pure darkness, writhed a spectral form that Wukong recognized immediately. It was the Bull King, or rather, the corrupted fragment of his soul. This version of the Bull King was even more monstrous than the one Wukong had faced in the mortal realm. It was a creature of pure chaos, its form constantly shifting and roiling, horns and hooves and teeth appearing and disappearing in a nauseating display. As Wukong entered, the creature's eyes, all 100 of them, fixed upon him. "You!" it bellowed, its voice shaking the very foundations of the palace. "Have you come to gloat, Monkey King? To witness the fruits of your destruction?" Wukong stood his ground, meeting the creature's gaze steadily. "No," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I've come to bring you home." The corrupted soul laughed, a sound like mountains collapsing. "Home? There is no home. There is only pain, only loss, and it is all because of you." Tendrils of darkness shot out from the creature, wrapping around Wukong before he could react. He found himself lifted off the ground, brought face to face with the Bull King's tortured soul. "Yes," Wukong said, not struggling against the bonds. "It is because of me. I caused you immeasurable pain. I took away the one you loved most. And I am sorry." The creature paused, confusion rippling across its ever-changing form. Wukong continued, his voice growing stronger. "But this corruption, this surrender to chaos and despair, this isn't you, Bull King. This isn't the proud warrior I fought, the devoted husband who danced among the stars with fair fox. You are more than your pain. You are more than your loss." "And so am I," Wukong added softly. "We've both made mistakes, we've both caused harm, but we can choose to be more, to do better, to heal, rather than destroy." The corrupted soul's form flickered, momentarily taking on a more recognizable shape. It hurts," it whispered, sounding for the first time like the Bull King Wukong remembered. "I know," Wukong said gently, "and it will probably always hurt. But you don't have to face that pain alone. Your daughter needs you. The realms need you. Let go of this corruption, old friend. Come back with me." For a long moment, the chamber was silent save for the soft clink of ethereal chains. Then, with a sound like a sigh of relief, the darkness began to dissipate. The monstrous form melted away, leaving behind a spectral image of the Bull King as he once was, proud, strong, and clear-eyed. The chains dissolved, and Wukong found himself lowered gently to the ground. The Bull King's soul fragment floated before him, a look of weary peace on its translucent features. "Thank you, son Wukong," it said. "I had forgotten who I was, who I could be." Wukong smiled, feeling a weight lift from his own heart. "That makes two of us." Now, what do you say we get out of this gloomy place?" As they made their way back through the palace, Wukong felt a shift in the air around them. The oppressive atmosphere of the underworld seemed to recoil from the purified soul beside him. It was as if, in saving the Bull King, Wukong had struck a blow against the very essence of despair itself. They emerged from the palace to find the ferryman waiting for them, boat at the ready. As they crossed the dark river, Wukong glanced at his companion. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I think I'm finally starting to understand what this whole redemption thing is really about." The Bull King's soul smiled. "As am I, old friend, as am I." Together, Monkey King and Bull King, two ancient adversaries turned unlikely allies, made their way back towards the land of the living. Behind them, the underworld seemed just a little less dark, a little less hopeless, and deep within Wukong's chest, a warmth began to grow. Not the fleeting heat of chaos and destruction, but the steady, enduring flame of true purpose. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in eons, Sun Wukong felt truly, unequivocally alive. Chapter 9. The Yellow Wind King's Realm. The transition from the underworld was jarring. One moment, Sun Wukong was stepping through the shadowy portal back to the mortal realm, the Bull King's restored soul beside him. The next, he found himself alone, enveloped in a swirling maelstrom of golden sand. Wukong blinked, shielding his eyes against the glare. Gone were the blighted landscapes and sickly skies he had grown accustomed to. Instead, he stood in a vast desert that stretched as far as the eye could see. But this was no ordinary desert. The sand beneath his feet shimmered with an inner light, and the dunes seemed to shift and flow like liquid gold. "Well," Wukong muttered, brushing grains of luminous sand from his fur, "this is new." As if in response to his voice, the wind picked up, swirling around him in intricate patterns. Wukong tensed, ready for an attack, but the sand merely coalesced into floating symbols and images. He recognized some from ancient texts, representations of cosmic forces, the cycle of reincarnation, the balance of yin and yang. "I don't suppose you could point me in the direction of the next relic?" Wukong asked the wind. To his surprise, the sand responded, forming an arrow that pointed towards a shimmering mirage on the horizon. Shrugging, Wukong set off in the indicated direction. As he walked, he noticed that his footprints in the sand didn't last. The moment he lifted his foot, the impressions would swirl and vanish, as if he had never been there at all. "Curiouser and curiouser," he mused. The mirage grew clearer as he approached. What had at first appeared to be a distant city slowly resolved into a single massive structure. It was a pagoda unlike any Wukong had ever seen. Its countless tiers seemed to be made of solidified wind, constantly shifting and reforming. Golden clouds drifted lazily around its upper levels, occasionally coalescing into fantastical shapes, dragons, phoenixes, and stranger creatures that defied description. At the base of the pagoda stood a figure, tall and regal. As Wukong drew closer, he saw that the being's form was as mutable as the sand around them. One moment it appeared as a wizened old man with a flowing beard, the next a majestic lion with a mane of golden flame. "Welcome, Sun Wukong," the figure said, its voice like the whisper of wind through ancient ruins. "I am the Yellow Wind King." "We have been expecting you." Wukong cocked an eyebrow. "We? I only see you, your windiness." The Yellow Wind King's laugh was the rustle of sand dunes shifting. "In this realm, Monkey King, singular and plural, are often one and the same. But come, there is much to discuss and little time in which to do it." With a gesture, the Yellow Wind King created a swirling vortex of sand that lifted them both to the highest tier of the pagoda. Wukong found himself in a circular chamber whose walls seemed to be made of solidified sunlight. At the center stood a pedestal, and upon it, "Another relic," Wukong breathed, taking a step forward. The Yellow Wind King held up a hand. "Not so fast, great sage. This fragment of your essence is not a prize to be claimed, but a key to be understood. Tell me, why do you seek these relics?" Wukong opened his mouth to give a flippant response, then paused. In this strange, shimmering realm he felt compelled towards honesty. "At first it was about regaining my power," he admitted. "But now, I'm not so sure. I want to stop the Yai, yes. I want to protect the realms. But more than that, I think I want to understand. To understand who I truly am, beyond the legends and the mistakes." The yellow-winged king nodded, its form settling momentarily into that of a great owl. "A worthy goal. But be warned, Monkey King. The path you walk is more complex than you can imagine. Your actions, past and future, ripple across time and space in ways beyond mortal or immortal comprehension." With another gesture, the air around them filled with swirling images, Wukong saw himself as he had been, proud, destructive, reveling in chaos. But he also saw other versions of himself. A wise teacher guiding young disciples, a stalwart protector standing against cosmic threats, a humble pilgrim seeking enlightenment. "All of these are you," the Yellow-Wind King said softly. "All of these could be you. The choices you make, the path you choose to walk, will determine not just your fate, but the fate of all realms." Wukong's head spun as he tried to take in the myriad possibilities. "I don't understand. How can I be all of these things?" The Yellow-Wind King's form shifted again, this time becoming a mirror image of Wukong himself. "You are chaos and order, destruction and creation. You are the stone that was born from the primal forces of the universe, given form and consciousness. Your journey is not just about redemption, Sun Wukong. It is about balance." The images swirled faster, blending together in a dizzying kaleidoscope. Wukong caught glimpses of great battles, of worlds born and dying, of forces beyond his comprehension clashing on scales both cosmic and infinitesimal. "The Yai is not just a threat to the realms," the Yellow-Wind King continued, its voice now a chorus of countless beings. "It is a force of pure entropy, seeking to unravel the very fabric of existence. And you, Monkey King, born of stone yet imbued with divine spark, are uniquely positioned to stand against it." Wukong's gaze was drawn back to the relic on the pedestal. In its crystalline surface he saw reflections of all his possible selves, swirling and merging. "So what am I supposed to do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Yellow-Wind King placed a hand on Wukong's shoulder. Its touch was both burning hot and freezing cold, solid as stone and insubstantial as mist. "You must find the balance within yourself," it said. "Between the trickster and the sage, the destroyer and the protector. Only then will you be able to face the trials ahead and stand against the unraveling of all things." Wukong took a deep breath, centering himself. He reached out and grasped the relic. As his fingers closed around it, he felt a surge of power unlike anything he had experienced before. It wasn't just strength or speed or magical ability. It was potential, the potential to be anything, to shape reality itself. For a moment, the sheer weight of possibility threatened to overwhelm him. But then he felt other presences. The Bull King's steady strength, Ping Ping's fierce determination, even the faint echo of Princess Fair Fox's unwavering spirit. They grounded him, reminding him of why he had begun this journey in the first place. As the surge of power settled into a steady thrum, Wukong looked up at the Yellow-Wind King. "I think I understand. Or at least, I'm beginning to." The Yellow-Wind King nodded, a smile playing across its ever-changing features. "That is all anyone can ask, great sage. The journey of understanding is never truly complete." The chamber around them began to fade, the walls of sunlight dissolving into motes of golden dust. Wukong felt himself being gently but inexorably pulled away. "Remember, Sun Wukong," the Yellow-Wind King's voice echoed as the realm disappeared around them. "The choices you make will shape more than just your own destiny. The balance of all things rests in your hands." With a final swirl of radiant sand, the Yellow Wind King's realm vanished. Wukong found himself standing once again in the mortal world, the Bull King and Ping Ping looking at him with concern. "Are you all right?" Ping Ping asked, her brow furrowed. "You vanished for a moment there." Wukong blinked, his mind still reeling from the visions he had seen. I'm fine," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "But I think our quest just got a lot more complicated." As he began to recount his experience in the Yellow Wind King's realm, Wukong felt the weight of the new relic in his pocket. It pulsed with power and possibility, a constant reminder of the choice that lay before him. Destroyer or protector, chaos or order, the fate of all realms hung in the balance, and the Monkey King stood at the fulcrum. The true test, Wukong realized, was only just beginning. Chapter 10, The Celestial Peach Garden Revisited. The boundary between the mortal realm and the celestial court shimmered before Sun Wukong like a veil of liquid starlight. He stood at the threshold, the Bull King and Ping Ping flanking him, all three gazing up at the imposing gates of heaven. "Are you sure about this?" the Bull King rumbled, his newly restored soul lending a depth of concern to his voice. "The Jade Emperor may not take kindly to your return." Wukong's lips quirked in a sardonic smile. "Oh, I'm sure he won't. But the relic is up there, and we need it. Besides," he added, a glint of his old mischief sparking in his golden eyes, "I've always been partial to dramatic entrances." Ping Ping rolled her eyes. "Just try not to start another celestial war, okay? We have enough problems with the Yai without adding angry gods to the mix." Wukong placed a hand over his heart in mock offense. "Me, start trouble. I'm wounded by the very suggestion." But his expression softened as he looked at his companions. "Don't worry, I'll be careful. Well, careful-ish." With a deep breath, Wukong stepped through the boundary. The world around him shimmered and shifted, mortal reality giving way to the breathtaking vistas of the celestial realm. For a moment Wukong was overwhelmed by a flood of memories. The last time he had stood here, he had been at the height of his power, challenging the very heavens themselves. Now he returned humbled, seeking not conquest but redemption. The celestial court spread out before him, its golden palaces and rainbow bridges as magnificent as ever. But Wukong's keen eyes could see signs of strain. The eternal light that suffused this realm seemed dimmer, the colours less vibrant. The Yai's corruption, it seemed, had not spared even this sacred place. Wukong moved cautiously through the celestial streets, using every trick he had learned over centuries of mischief-making to avoid detection. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment at how easy it was. Had heaven's defences truly grown so lax, or was he simply that good? As he neared the heart of the celestial court, Wukong felt a familiar pull. The relic fragments he carried resonated with something nearby, guiding him unerringly towards his goal. And as he crested a hill of clouds, he saw it, the celestial peach garden. The garden was a riot of pink blossoms, their sweet fragrance carrying on a warm breeze. Trees laden with golden fruit stretched as far as the eye could see. At the centre stood the greatest peach tree of all, its branches heavy with the immortality-granting peaches that Wukong had once so brazenly stolen. And there, nestled in the roots of that great tree, a familiar glint caught Wukong's eye. Another relic fragment. Wukong approached cautiously, every sense on high alert. This seemed too easy. Where were the guards, the magical wards, the deadly traps? As he reached the base of the great peach tree, Wukong hesitated. The relic fragment pulsed with power, calling to him. But so did the peaches hanging just overhead. Their scent was intoxicating, promising not just immortality but power beyond imagining. Wukong's hand, reaching for the relic, paused. Almost against his will, his gaze was drawn upward to the golden fruit. One peach, just one. With that power, he could defeat the Yai single-handedly. He could restore the realms to their former glory. He could be the great sage equal to heaven once more. My, how history does love to repeat itself. The voice, gentle yet carrying undeniable authority, snapped Wukong out of his reverie. He spun around to find himself face to face with the last being he expected or wanted to see. The Jade Emperor stood before him, resplendent in robes that shimmered with the light of 1,000 stars. His ageless face wore an expression of mild curiosity, as if finding the Monkey King in his peach garden was a minor surprise rather than a potential catastrophe. Wukong dropped into a defensive crouch, his mind racing. Fight, flee, make a grab for the relic, and hope for the best. But the Jade Emperor merely raised an eyebrow. "Peace, Sun Wukong? If I wished you harm, you would not have made it past the gates?" Wukong straightened slowly, confusion warring with suspicion on his face. "You knew I was here. You let me in." The Jade Emperor's laugh was like the chiming of distant bells. "Of course. Did you truly think you could sneak into heaven undetected? Especially now, with the power of the relics growing within you." He shook his head, amusement dancing in his ancient eyes. "You may have grown, old friend, but some of your youthful arrogance remains." Wukong bristled at that, but forced himself to remain calm. "If you knew I was here, why allow me to get this far? Why not stop me at the gates?" "Because," the Jade Emperor said, his tone growing serious, "I wanted to see what you would do when faced with temptation." He gestured to the laden branches above them. "The peaches are as potent as ever, Wukong. One bite would restore you to your full power and more. And yet you hesitated." Wukong glanced back at the golden fruit, feeling their pull even now. I'm not the same monkey I was," he said softly. "I've seen the consequences of unchecked power, of acting without thought for others." The Jade Emperor nodded, a glimmer of approval in his eyes. "Indeed, you have grown, Sun Wukong. Perhaps not in power, not yet, but in wisdom, in understanding." He stepped forward, reaching past Wukong to pluck the relic fragment from among the roots of the great peach tree. "This, I believe, is what you came for."
Wukong stared at the fragment, then at the Jade Emperor, suspicion still evident in his stance.
"You're giving it to me, just like that. The relics are yours by right, Monkey King. They are fragments of your very being." The Jade Emperor held out the relic. "But more than that, they are keys to the salvation of all realms. The Yai's corruption spreads, as I'm sure you've seen. Even heaven is not immune. We need you, Wukong. Not as a subject, not as a weapon, but as a protector." Wukong reached out slowly, his fingers closing around the relic. As he did, he felt a surge of power, greater than any he had experienced before. Images flashed through his mind, his past misdeeds, yes, but also his moments of heroism. The lives he had saved, the wrongs he had righted. When the vision cleared, Wukong found himself kneeling, overwhelmed by the weight of memory and responsibility. The Jade Emperor stood before him, no longer a distant authority figure, but a fellow warrior in a cosmic battle. "Rise, Sun Wukong," the Jade Emperor said, his voice carrying the weight of eons. "You kneel to no one, not even me. You have chosen your path, not that of a subject, nor that of a rebel, but that of a true protector of the realms." As Wukong stood, he felt a shift within himself. The relics he had gathered pulsed in unison, their power flowing through him. He wasn't fully restored, not yet, but he was closer than ever to his true self. "The road ahead is fraught with danger," the Jade Emperor warned. "The Yai grows stronger by the day, but you do not walk this path alone. Remember that, Monkey King." Wukong nodded, a new resolve settling over him. He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back at the Jade Emperor with a hint of his old mischievous grin. "I don't suppose I could take just one peach for the road?" The Jade Emperor's laughter echoed through the garden. "Some things truly never change. Go, Wukong. The realms await their protector." As Sun Wukong departed the celestial peach garden, he felt lighter than he had in eons. The weight of his past remained, but it no longer threatened to crush him. Instead, it served as a foundation, a reminder of how far he had come and how far he still had to go. The Monkey King was transforming once again, not into a force of pure chaos, nor into a mere servant of heavenly order. He was becoming something new, something balanced, a true protector of the realms, with the wisdom to wield his power responsibly. As he passed through the gates of heaven, returning to the mortal world where his companions waited, Wukong couldn't help but smile. The greatest adventure of his long life was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. Chapter 11, The Temple of Crouching Tiger. The mist-shrouded peaks of Mount Shu loomed before Sun Wukong, their jagged silhouettes piercing the clouded sky like the teeth of some colossal beast. Somewhere among those forbidding crags lay his destination, the Temple of Crouching Tiger, home to some of the oldest and wisest celestial beasts in existence. Wukong glanced at his companions. The Bull King stood stoic, his restored soul lending him an air of quiet strength. Ping Ping, however, couldn't hide her awe at the majestic landscape. "I've heard stories of this place," she whispered, her eyes wide. "They say the tigers here are as old as the mountains themselves." Wukong nodded, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "Older, some of them. And far more dangerous than any mortal tiger could ever be." He managed a wry smile. "Try not to pet any, no matter how fluffy they look." As they began their ascent, the very air seemed to thicken with ancient power. Wukong felt the relics he carried pulse in response, their energies intertwining with the primordial forces that permeated this sacred place. The path was treacherous, winding through narrow ledges and over bottomless chasms. More than once, Wukong had to use his newly restored shape-shifting abilities to help his companions navigate particularly difficult passages. But as they climbed higher, he began to sense they weren't alone. Eyes watched from the mist, some curious, others wary, and a few decidedly hostile. Shadows flitted at the edges of their vision, too quick and too strange to be natural animals. Finally, as they rounded a bend in the path, they found their way blocked by an enormous white tiger. Its fur shimmered with an inner light, and its eyes held the wisdom of millennia. "Sun Wukong!" The tiger's voice resonated in their minds rather than their ears. "You are either very brave or very foolish to seek us out. Perhaps both." Wukong bowed low, motioning for his companions to do the same. "Great One, we come seeking wisdom. The realms are in danger, and I believe the answers we need may lie within your temple." The tiger's tail lashed, stirring the mist around them. "We are aware of the eye's corruption, Monkey King. We have watched your journey with great interest, but knowledge comes at a price. Are you prepared to pay it?" Without hesitation, Wukong nodded. "Whatever it takes." The tiger's eyes seemed to bore into Wukong's very soul. After a long moment, it stepped aside. "Then follow, if you dare. But be warned, the truths you seek may not be the ones you wish to hear." As they entered the Temple of Crouching Tiger, Wukong felt a shift in the air. The mortal world fell away, replaced by a realm that existed somewhere between heaven and earth. Massive columns of living wood stretched towards a ceiling lost in shadows, their branches intertwining to form intricate archways and chambers. Celestial beasts of all kinds moved through the temple, not just tigers, but phoenixes with feathers of living flame, dragons that seemed to be made of starlight, and creatures Wukong had no names for. All turned to watch as the white tiger led them deeper into the heart of the temple. They emerged into a vast circular chamber. At its center stood an ancient tree, its trunk easily 100 feet in diameter. Carved into its bark were symbols and images that seemed to shift and change as Wukong watched, telling the story of the universe itself. Gathered around the tree were the eldest of the celestial beasts, beings so old and powerful that Wukong felt like a newborn in comparison. The white tiger took its place among them, fixing Wukong with its penetrating gaze. "Speak, Sun Wukong," the assembled beasts said in unison, their voices a harmony of growls, roars, and otherworldly sounds. "Ask, and we shall answer. but know that every truth comes with a price." Wukong stepped forward, feeling the weight of countless ages pressing down upon him. "The relics I carry," he began, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "They're more than just fragments of my power, aren't they? What is their true nature?" The great tree's branches rustled, and for a moment Wukong thought he saw faces forming in its bark, the faces of every being he had ever known, and countless more he hadn't. "The relics," the celestial beasts intoned, "are keystones of reality itself. When the primordial forces that shaped the universe settled into balance, they left behind anchors, points of stability in a chaotic cosmos. You, Sun Wukong, born of stone but imbued with divine spark, became one such anchor. Images flashed across the tree's surface, showing Wukong's birth from the stone egg, his rise to power, his rebellion against heaven. But intertwined with these familiar scenes were glimpses of cosmic forces beyond his comprehension, the push and pull of creation and destruction on a universal scale. Your journey, the beasts continued, your very existence is a fulcrum upon which the fate of all realms balances. The eye seeks to shatter that balance, to return all of creation to formless chaos. It is drawn to you, Monkey King, because you represent both its greatest threat and its greatest opportunity." Wukong's mind reeled as he tried to process this information. "But why me? Why was I chosen for this role?" The white tiger stepped forward, its eyes gleaming. "You are not chosen, Sun Wukong. You chose. Every action, every decision you have made throughout your long existence has shaped you into what you are. Your capacity for both great destruction and great protection, your ability to challenge the very heavens while also defending the weak. These apparent contradictions make you uniquely suited to maintain the cosmic balance." The Bull King spoke up, his voice gruff with concern. "But what does this mean for our fight against the Yai? How can we hope to defeat a force of pure entropy?" The celestial beasts turned their ancient gazes upon him. "Defeat? No. The Yai cannot be defeated any more than darkness can be permanently banished by light. It is a necessary counterforce to creation itself, but it can be balanced, contained, guided back to its proper place in the cosmic order." Ping Ping, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally found her voice. "And that's where the relics come in. They're tools for maintaining this balance." "Tools, yes," the beasts agreed, "but also keys. The remaining relics are hidden in places where the veil between realms is thinnest, where the Yai's corruption is most likely to seep through. By reclaiming them, Sun Wukong, you do more than restore your own power. You reaffirm the boundaries between order and chaos, between creation and destruction." Wukong nodded slowly, the weight of this knowledge settling over him like a mantle. "I understand, but you mentioned a price for this truth. What must I pay?" The chamber grew unnaturally still. Even the ever-shifting images on the great tree froze in place. When the celestial beasts spoke again, their voice carried a note of sorrow. "The price, Monkey King, is understanding. True, deep understanding of your place in the cosmic order. You can no longer be the carefree trickster, acting on whim and desire. Nor can you be a mere servant of heaven, bound by rigid laws. You must walk a middle path, bearing the weight of both chaos and order within you." The white tiger approached Wukong, its massive head level with his own.
"Are you prepared for this burden, Sun Wukong?"
"To know that your every action, your every choice, ripples across the very fabric of reality." Wukong closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He thought of all he had experienced since awakening from his long imprisonment, the devastation he had witnessed, the allies he had made, the growth he had undergone. When he opened his eyes again, they shone with resolve. "I am," he said simply. The white tiger nodded, then without warning pressed its forehead against Wukong's. A surge of cosmic energy flowed between them, and Wukong gasped as understanding flooded his mind. He saw the intricate web of cause and effect that tied all realms together. the delicate balance that maintained existence itself. And he saw his own place within that grand design, not as a mere piece on a cosmic chessboard, but as a conscious, vital linchpin of reality. When the vision faded, Wukong found himself on his knees, tears streaming down his face. The Bull King and Ping Ping were at his side in an instant, their faces etched with concern. "I'm all right," Wukong assured them, his voice hoarse. I understand now. Truly understand." The celestial beasts regarded him with newfound respect. "Then go, Sun Wukong," they said. "Seek out the remaining relics, restore the balance. But remember, with great understanding comes great responsibility. The fate of all realms rests in your hands." As they left the temple of Crouching Tiger, descending back into the mortal world, Wukong felt fundamentally changed. The knowledge he had gained weighed heavily upon him, but it also filled him with a sense of purpose he had never known before. The Monkey King was no longer just fighting for redemption or to save the realms, he was fighting to maintain the very fabric of existence itself. And as the mists of Mount Shu swirled around them, obscuring the path ahead, Wukong knew that his greatest challenges and his true test were yet to come. Chapter 12. Betrayal at the Great Pagoda. The Great Pagoda pierced the sky like a needle threading through silk, its countless tiers disappearing into the clouds above. Sun Wukong stood at its base, neck craned back, a mix of awe and trepidation etched on his features. The Bull King and Ping Ping flanked him, their own expressions mirroring his. It's said that each level of the pagoda represents a different stage of enlightenment, Wukong mused, his voice barely above a whisper. And at the top, another relic, Ping Ping finished, and hopefully some answers. The Bull King grunted, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the pagoda's entrance. "I don't like it. It feels too exposed, like we're being watched." Wukong nodded, feeling the same unease. Since their visit to the Temple of Crouching Tiger, his senses had been heightened, attuned to the subtle currents of cosmic energy that flowed around them. And right now those currents felt off. "You're right," he said, turning to his companions, "which is why I think I should go alone." Ping Ping immediately began to protest, but Wukong held up a hand. "The pagoda's trials are meant for individual enlightenment, and if there is danger, I'm best equipped to handle it." He managed a wry smile. "Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on your father. Make sure he doesn't start any celestial bar fights while I'm gone." The Bull King snorted, but there was a glimmer of amusement in his eyes. "Just be careful, old friend. We've come too far to lose you now." With a final nod to his companions, Wukong approached the pagoda's entrance. As he crossed the threshold, he felt a shift in the air, as if he'd stepped into another realm entirely. The sounds of the outside world faded away, replaced by a profound silence. The interior of the first level was a vast, circular chamber. Its walls were adorned with intricate murals depicting scenes from myth and history. At the center stood a spiraling staircase leading up to the next floor. As Wukong took his first step onto the staircase, a voice echoed through the chamber, not sound, but pure thought implanted directly into his mind. "Sun Wukong," it said, carrying the weight of eons, "you who have challenged heaven and hell alike. Are you prepared to face your greatest opponent?" Wukong squared his shoulders. "I am. Then begin your ascent. But be warned, each level will strip away another layer of illusion. By the time you reach the top, you will stand naked before the truth of your own existence. Many have gone mad from less." The voice faded, leaving Wukong alone with his thoughts. Taking a deep breath, he began to climb. Each level of the pagoda presented a new challenge, a new facet of Wukong's psyche to confront. He relived key moments of his long life, his birth from stone, his tutelage under the Taoist Master Subhuti, his rebellion against heaven. But now, with the wisdom gained from the celestial beasts, he saw these events through new eyes. He saw the cosmic ripples caused by his actions, the lives touched, for better and worse, by his choices. He felt the weight of every mistake, every moment of careless destruction. But he also saw the times he had protected the weak, stood against injustice, brought joy and wonder to the world. As he climbed higher, Wukong felt himself changing. The brash arrogance of his youth fell away, replaced by a deep, abiding understanding of his place in the grand tapestry of existence. He was not just Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. He was a force of nature, a linchpin of reality itself. Finally, after what felt like eons of introspection and trial, Wukong reached the highest level of the pagoda. The chamber here was different, smaller, more intimate. At its center, bathed in a column of pure light, hovered another relic fragment. But Wukong was not alone. A figure stepped out of the shadows, lithe, fox-like, with eyes that glimmered with cunning intelligence. Wukong recognized him instantly. "Rassi," he breathed, "what are you doing here?" The fox spirit smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Why, I'm here to congratulate you, old friend. You've come so far, grown so much. It's truly inspiring." Wukong's eyes narrowed. Something in Rassi's tone set him on edge. "You didn't answer my question. How did you get here? Why are you here?" Rassi's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "Oh, Wukong, always so direct? Can't an old acquaintance simply drop by to catch up? Not when that acquaintance somehow beat me to the top of a pagoda designed for individual enlightenment, no." The fox spirit laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Clever as ever. Very well, let's dispense with the pleasantries." His form seemed to shimmer, and suddenly the air around him writhed with tendrils of darkness. "I'm here for the relic, Monkey King. And you're going to give it to me." Wukong dropped into a defensive stance, his mind racing. "The Yai!" "You're working for the Yai. Working for—" "Oh no, my dear Wukong. I am the Yai, or at least a part of it." Rassi's eyes began to glow with an otherworldly light. "You see, entropy isn't just a force. It's alive, conscious, and it's been watching you for a very, very long time." The tendrils of darkness lashed out faster than thought. Wukong leapt and twisted, narrowly avoiding their grasp. He reached for the relic, but a wall of shadows sprung up between him and the light. "Why, Rassi?" Wukong demanded, dodging another attack. "We were friends once, allies." The fox spirit's laughter turned bitter. "Friends, allies. We were never equals, Wukong. You were always the star, the chosen one, the great sage equal to heaven." Rassi spat the title like a curse. "While the rest of us scrabbled for scraps of power, you were gifted cosmic significance on a silver platter." Wukong felt a pang of guilt. He had never considered how his meteoric rise might have affected those around him. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I never meant—" "Save your apologies," Rassi snarled. "The Yai showed me the truth. There is no cosmic plan, no grand design. There is only chaos, entropy, the slow unwinding of all things. And I intend to speed that process along." The chamber erupted into a maelstrom of shadow and light. Wukong fought with every ounce of skill and power he possessed. But Rassi, infused with the Yai's chaotic energy, was a formidable opponent. For every blow Wukong landed, Rassi seemed to dissolve and reform. For every defense Wukong mounted, the fox spirit found a way through. And all the while, the relic pulsed with power, just out of reach. As the battle raged, Wukong felt something shift within him. The wisdom he had gained on his ascent, the cosmic understanding granted by the celestial beasts, it all coalesced into a moment of perfect clarity. He saw Rassi not as an enemy, but as a being in pain, twisted by envy, corrupted by the very force he thought would grant him power. And in that moment, Wukong knew what he had to do. He stopped fighting. Rassi, caught off guard by the sudden lack of resistance, stumbled. His next attack, meant to be parried, instead struck Wukong full in the chest. The Monkey King flew backward, slamming into the wall of the chamber with bone-crushing force. Why? Rassi demanded, confusion and anger warring in his voice. Why did you let me hit you? Wukong coughed, tasting blood. But when he looked up at Rassi, there was no anger in his eyes. Only compassion. Because, he wheezed, sometimes the only way to break a cycle of violence is to refuse to participate. He struggled to his feet, arms spread wide. I see you, Rassi. I see your pain, your anger, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry I never noticed before. I'm sorry I took our friendship for granted. Rassi faltered, the shadows around him flickering. Stop it, he hissed. Stop trying to trick me. Fight back. But Wukong only smiled sadly. No more tricks, no more fighting, just truth. He took a step forward, then another. You're right, I was gifted a cosmic role I didn't earn, but that doesn't make your struggles any less valid, your pain any less real. With each word, each step, the shadows around Rassi grew more agitated. The fox spirit's face contorted in a rictus of conflicting emotions. Stay back, he shouted, but his voice cracked. Wukong didn't stop. He walked forward until he stood directly before Rassi, looking his old friend in the eye. It's not too late, he said softly. The eye doesn't control you. You can choose a different path. For a moment, just a moment, something like hope flickered in Rassi's eyes. Then, with a howl of anguish, he lashed out one final time. A tendril of pure darkness pierced Wukong's chest, wrapping around the relic fragments he carried. Wukong gasped, feeling the relics torn from his very being. Rassi stumbled backward, clutching the stolen fragments and the one that had been waiting in the chamber. I'm sorry, Wukong, Rassi said, and for an instant he sounded like his old self, but it's far too late for me. With a sound like reality tearing, Rassi vanished, taking the relics with him. Wukong collapsed to his knees, feeling weaker than he had since his awakening. The power he had slowly been regaining was gone, ripped away in an instant. As the light in the chamber dimmed, Wukong felt the great pagoda beginning to crumble around him. His quest for enlightenment had led to his greatest defeat yet, but as he struggled to his feet, preparing to flee the collapsing structure, a small part of him refused to give up hope. Rassi had apologized. Somewhere, buried beneath layers of corruption and pain, his old friends still existed. And if there was hope for Rassi, there was hope for all creation. Battered, weakened, not broken, Sun Wukong began his descent. The battle against the Yai had taken a dire turn, but the war was far from over, and the Monkey King had never been one to back down from a challenge. Chapter 13. The Sea of Boiling Tides. The shore of the Sea of Boiling Tides lived up to its name. Steam rose in great billowing clouds from the turbulent waters, obscuring the horizon and creating a perpetual haze. The sand beneath Sun Wukong's feet was uncomfortably hot, and the air tasted of salt and sulphur. Beside him, the Bull King sniffed the air warily. I don't like this, Wukong. The very elements seem angry here. Ping Ping nodded in agreement, her eyes wide as she took in the chaotic seascape. Are you sure another relic is hidden out there, it seems? Impossible. Wukong managed a wan smile. After his defeat at the Great Pagoda, after Rassi's betrayal, impossible felt like an understatement. He was weaker now than he had been since his awakening, the loss of the relics leaving him feeling hollow and vulnerable. But he couldn't afford to show weakness, not when his companions were counting on him. Impossible is what we do, remember, he said, injecting confidence into his voice. Besides, according to the celestial beasts, the remaining relics are hidden where the barriers between realms are thinnest. What better place than a sea that seems to straddle the line between water and fire? The Bull King grunted, unconvinced. And how exactly do you plan to cross this infernal ocean? We have no boat, and even if we did, it would likely be boiled to splinters in minutes. Wukong's grin turned mischievous, a shadow of his old self peeking through. Who said anything about a boat? With that, he closed his eyes, focusing on what remained of his shape-shifting abilities. It was harder now, without the power of the relics to draw upon, but not impossible. Slowly, Painfully, he felt his form begin to change. His fur hardened into scales, his limbs fusing into powerful flippers. When he opened his eyes again, he had taken on the form of a massive sea turtle, its shell gleaming with an iridescent sheen that seemed to repel the heat. "Well?" Wukong's voice emerged as a deep rumble. "Are you coming?" The Bull King and Ping Ping exchanged glances, then shrugged. They had seen stranger things in their travels with the Monkey King. Carefully, they climbed onto Wukong's broad shell. With a powerful thrust of his flippers, Wukong pushed off from the shore and into the roiling sea. The journey was treacherous from the start. The water around them churned and bubbled, great gouts of steam erupting without warning. More than once, Wukong had to dive deep to avoid a particularly violent eruption, his passengers holding on for dear life. As they ventured further from shore, new dangers emerged. Monstrous shapes moved in the depths below, their forms twisted by the sea's unnatural heat. Ping Ping cried out in alarm as a tentacle, easily as thick as a tree trunk and covered in bioluminescent suckers, broke the surface near them. "Hold on!" Wukong shouted, putting on a burst of speed. They barely avoided the grasping appendage, but the motion had attracted attention. More tentacles rose from the boiling water, accompanied by a collection of eyes, each as large as a shield and glowing with malevolent intelligence. The Bull King stood atop Wukong's shell, his stance wide to maintain balance. "Keep moving," he bellowed. "I'll handle this overgrown calamari." As Wukong swam, zigging and zagging to avoid the creature's grasp, the Bull King fought with all his considerable might. He grabbed tentacles as they came near, using their own momentum to fling them aside. When that wasn't enough, he resorted to his celestial abilities, calling down bolts of lightning to drive the monster back. But for every threat they overcame, two more seemed to take its place. Wukong's strength was flagging, the effort of maintaining his transformation and fighting the violent currents taking its toll. Just when it seemed they might be overwhelmed, Ping Ping spotted something through the steam. "There!" she shouted, pointing ahead. "I see land." Sure enough, an island was emerging from the mist. But unlike the blighted shore they had left behind, this island seemed to glow with an inner light. Lush vegetation covered its slopes, and at its peak stood a structure that shimmered like a mirage. With renewed determination, Wukong made for the island. The sea monsters, as if repelled by some invisible barrier, did not follow them into the shallows. As soon as they reached the beach, Wukong released his transformation, collapsing onto the sand in exhaustion. "Well," he panted, "that was bracing." The Bull King helped him to his feet, concern etched on his features. "You pushed yourself too hard, old friend. Without the relics, I'm still the Monkey King," Wukong interrupted, his voice firm despite his fatigue. "And we have a job to do." They made their way up the island's slope, the vegetation around them unlike anything they had seen before. Flowers that seemed to be made of living crystal chimed softly in the breeze. Fruits that glowed within a fire hung from trees with silver bark. At the island's peak they found not a building but a natural formation, a ring of stones surrounding a pool of water so still it looked like a mirror. And floating above the centre of the pool, pulsing with familiar energy, was another relic fragment. "Finally, some good luck," Ping Ping breathed. But before they could approach, the surface of the pool began to ripple. A figure rose from the water, a woman of otherworldly beauty, her skin shimmering like mother of pearl, her hair a flowing cascade that seemed to blend with the water itself. "Sun Wukong," she said, her voice carrying the rhythm of waves on a shore. "We have been expecting you." Wukong bowed low, recognizing the being before them as far more than she appeared. "Great Spirit of the Sea," he said respectfully. "We seek the relic you guard." The spirit's eyes, deep as ocean trenches, studied each of them in turn. "The relic is not simply a prize to be claimed, Monkey King. It is a responsibility, a burden. Are you prepared for what it will show you?" for the truth it contains. Wukong straightened, meeting the spirit's gaze. After everything we've been through, everything I've learned, yes, I'm ready for the truth, whatever it may be. The spirit nodded slowly.
Very well, but know this, the knowledge contained within this fragment will change you.
It will show you the true nature of the Yai and your own role in the cosmic balance. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. She gestured, and the relic floated towards Wukong. As his fingers closed around it, he gasped. Images flooded his mind not just of his own past, but of the very birth of the universe. He saw the primordial forces of creation and destruction, locked in an eternal dance. He saw the Yai not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a necessary part of existence itself. And he saw himself, a fulcrum upon which the balance of all reality rested. When the vision cleared, Wukong found himself on his knees, tears streaming down his face. The Bull King and Ping Ping were at his side, their faces etched with concern. "What did you see?" Ping Ping asked softly. Wukong took a shuddering breath. "Everything," he whispered. "I saw everything." He looked up at the sea spirit, understanding dawning in his eyes. "The Yai can't be destroyed, can it?" "Not completely." She shook her head. "No more than light can exist without darkness or life without death. The Yai is entropy, the force that allows for change and renewal. Without it, creation would stagnate." "Then what hope do we have?" the Bull King growled. "How can we save the realms if our enemy is a fundamental force of reality?" Wukong rose to his feet, his expression resolute. "We restore the balance," he said. "The Yai has grown too powerful, too chaotic. Our job isn't to destroy it, but to push it back to its proper place in the cosmic order." The sea spirit smiled, approval shining in her ageless eyes. "You understand, then? This is why you were chosen, Sun Wukong. Not just for your strength or your cleverness, but for your capacity to understand and maintain the great balance." As the implications of this knowledge settled over him, Wukong felt a change within himself. The relic's power flowed through him, but it was different from before. Instead of raw strength, he felt awareness, a deep, abiding connection to the forces that shaped reality itself. "Thank you," he said to the sea spirit, "for this gift and for the wisdom to use it." She nodded, already beginning to sink back into her pool. "The final battles approach, Monkey King. Remember what you have learned here. The fate of all realms rests in your hands." As they made their way back down the island slope, preparing for the treacherous journey back to shore, Wukong's mind raced with newfound purpose. The betrayal at the Great Pagoda no longer felt like a defeat, but a necessary step on his path to understanding. Rassi, the Yai, the cosmic balance, all the pieces were falling into place. And though the challenges ahead were greater than anything he had faced before, Sun Wukong felt ready to meet them. For the first time since his awakening, he truly understood what it meant to be the great sage equal to heaven. Not a title of power or authority, but a responsibility to all of creation. The Monkey King squared his shoulders, a determined glint in his eye. The real battle was just beginning. Chapter 14 returned to the mortal realm. The boundary between realms shimmered like heat haze as Sun Wukong, the Bull King, and Ping Ping stepped back into the mortal world. The transition was jarring. Gone were the mystical vistas and cosmic wonders they had grown accustomed to. In their place stood a landscape scarred by neglect and suffering. They found themselves on the outskirts of a small village, its buildings crumbling and fields lying fallow. The air hung heavy with the acrid scent of smoke and decay. In the distance, a mountain that should have been lush with vegetation stood bare, its slopes scarred by landslides and forest fires. "What happened here?" Ping Ping whispered, her eyes wide with dismay. Wukong's jaw clenched, his newly enhanced senses picking up on the subtle wrongness that permeated the area. "The Yai's corruption," he said softly, "but there's something else too. A distortion in the local spiritual energy." The Bull King nodded grimly. "I feel it too. Something's very wrong here. As they approached the village, the extent of the devastation became clear. Villagers moved listlessly through the streets, their faces gaunt and eyes hollow. Children that should have been playing instead huddled in doorways, watching the newcomers with wary, too-old eyes. An elderly woman, her back bent with age and hardship, approached them cautiously. "Travellers," she croaked, her voice rough from disuse. "You should not have come here. This place is cursed." Wukong knelt before her, his golden eyes filled with compassion. "What happened, grandmother? What curse plagues your village?" The old woman laughed bitterly. "Not just our village, stranger. The entire valley suffers under the tyranny of the mountain god. Once he protected us, brought rain for our crops, kept the forests healthy. But now," she gestured at the desolation around them, "now he demands tribute we cannot pay, and punishes us for our lack of faith with drought and disaster." The Bull King's eyes flashed with anger. A deity abusing his power over mortals, disgraceful. Ping Ping laid a hand on her father's arm. But why? Why would a local god turn against his own worshippers? Wukong stood, his expression thoughtful. The Yai's corruption affects immortals differently than mortals. It twists their purpose, amplifies their worst impulses. He turned to the old woman. "Where can we find this mountain god?" She pointed a gnarled finger towards the scarred peak looming over the village. "At the summit, but beware, strangers. Many have gone to plead our case. None have returned." Wukong nodded solemnly. "Thank you, grandmother. Rest easy. We'll put this right." As they made their way out of the village and began the ascent up the mountain, the Bull King grumbled, "I don't like this, Wukong. We're supposed to be gathering the remaining relics, not getting involved in local disputes." Wukong paused, turning to face his companions. "Don't you see? This is why we're gathering the relics in the first place. To protect the realms, all the realms, including the mortal world. These people are suffering because of the cosmic imbalance we're trying to correct. Now, we can't just ignore that." Ping Ping nodded enthusiastically. "He's right, father. What's the point of saving the world if we don't help the people in it?" The Bull King sighed, but there was a glimmer of pride in his eyes. "When did you two become so wise?" "Very well, let's go beard this corrupted deity in his den." As they climbed higher, the air grew thin and cold. The vegetation, already sparse, gave way to bare rock and patches of sickly, twisted plants that seemed to recoil from their touch. Finally, they reached the summit. There, carved into the living rock of the mountaintop, stood an ancient temple. Its once grand columns were cracked and stained, and an oppressive aura of malevolence hung over the entire structure. Before they could approach, a booming voice echoed across the peak. "Who dares intrude upon the domain of the mountain god?" The temple doors burst open and a figure emerged that made even Wukong take a step back. The mountain god was a colossus of stone and earth, easily 20 feet tall. But where he should have radiated the quiet strength of the eternal mountains, he instead exuded a palpable sense of rage and greed. Veins of sickly purple energy pulsed beneath his rocky skin, clear signs of the Yai's corruption. "Great mountain god!" Wukong called out, his voice steady despite the display of power before them. "We've come to supplicate, to beg." The deity interrupted, his voice like an avalanche. "Your tributes are insufficient, mortals. Your faith wanes. For this you shall suffer." The mountain god raised his massive fists, preparing to bring them down upon the interlopers. But before he could strike, Wukong moved. Drawing upon the power and wisdom granted by the relics, he leapt impossibly high, landing lightly atop the deity's shoulder. Now, Wukong said, his tone almost conversational. "Is that any way to treat visitors, especially visitors who've come such a long way to see you?" The mountain god roared in fury, trying to swat Wukong away. But the Monkey King was too quick, too agile. He danced across the deity's form, always just out of reach. "You know," Wukong continued, as if they were simply having a pleasant chat, I've been wondering, when exactly did you forget your true purpose? Was it when you first tasted the fear of your worshippers, or was it a more gradual thing? Silence. The mountain god bellowed. I am power incarnate. The mortals exist to serve me. Wukong's voice turned sad. Oh, my friend, you've got it all backwards. You exist to serve them. With that, Wukong placed his palm against the mountain god's forehead. There was a flash of golden light, and suddenly the colossal deity froze. Wukong closed his eyes, reaching out with his newfound cosmic awareness. He could see the threads of corruption running through the mountain god's being, the way the Yai had twisted his original purpose. But beneath it all, there was still a spark of the deity's true nature. Remember, Wukong whispered. Remember who you are. Remember why you were created. Images flashed between them, the birth of the mountain range, eons of watching over the valley and its inhabitants, the joy of bringing rain to parched fields and protecting travellers from treacherous passes. The mountain god trembled, cracks appearing in his stony skin. The veins of corruption began to recede, flaking away like old paint. What? What have I done? The deity's voice was softer now, filled with horror and regret. Wukong opened his eyes, smiling gently. What matters is what you'll do now. Your people need you, the real you. Slowly, the mountain god began to shrink, the excess power granted by the Yai's corruption fading away. When the transformation was complete, he stood only a head taller than Wukong, his form now a perfect blend of stone and living wood. Thank you, the mountain god said, bowing deeply to Wukong. You've saved me from myself. How can I ever repay you? Wukong gestured towards the village below. By being the protector these people deserve, by remembering that true strength comes from nurturing, not dominating. As the mountain god nodded and began to make his way down towards the village, Wukong turned back to his companions. The Bull King was looking at him with newfound respect, while Ping Ping's eyes shone with admiration. That, the Bull King rumbled, was impressive. You didn't defeat him, you healed him. Wukong shrugged, but there was a hint of pride in his smile. Fighting isn't always the answer. Sometimes you just need to remind someone of who they truly are. As they began their own descent, planning to ensure the village's recovery was underway before continuing their quest, Wukong felt a profound sense of purpose settle over him. This, he realized, was what it truly meant to be a protector of the realms. Not just fighting epic battles against cosmic forces, but healing the small wounds, righting the everyday injustices. The Yai's corruption was vast, its tendrils reaching into every corner of existence. But Wukong now understood that defeating it wasn't just about confronting it directly. It was about restoring balance, one act of compassion at a time. As they reached the outskirts of the village, already seeing signs of renewal as green began to creep back into the barren fields, Wukong knew that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. But for the first time, he felt truly ready to face them. The Monkey King had found his true path, and nothing, not demons, not corrupted gods, not even the Yai itself, would stop him from walking it. Chapter 15. The Hollow Flea. The mist swirled around Sun Wukong, obscuring everything beyond arm's reach. He had left the Bull King and Ping Ping behind, for the Hollow Flea allowed only one seeker at a time. The very air seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and Wukong could have sworn he heard whispers just at the edge of hearing. Well, he muttered to himself, this is certainly atmospheric. As if in response to his voice, the mists parted, revealing a path that seemed to be made of shifting silver sand. Wukong took a tentative step forward, and the ground beneath his feet rippled like water. A voice, neither male nor female, young nor old, echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Welcome, Sun Wukong, to the Hollow Flea. Here, all is illusion, yet all is truth. Your deepest fears and most secret desires will be laid bare. Are you prepared to face yourself, Monkey King? Wukong squared his shoulders. I've faced heaven and hell. I think I can handle a bit of self-reflection. The voice chuckled. a sound like wind through crystal chimes. "We shall see." The path before Wukong split into three, each leading off into different patches of mist. Without warning, the mists coalesced into three familiar figures, himself at different points in his long life. To the left stood Wukong, as he had been at the height of his rebellious phase, proud, arrogant, wreaking havoc across heaven and earth with gleeful abandon. To the right was Wukong as he had been during his long imprisonment, bitter, angry, consumed by thoughts of vengeance. And in the centre, Wukong's breath caught in his throat. The central figure was himself as he might have been, serene, wise, radiating an aura of balance and cosmic understanding. "Choose," the voice of the hollow flea commanded. "Which path will you walk?" Wukong hesitated. Part of him was drawn to the central figure, the idealized version of himself. But something felt off about it. Too perfect, too removed from the realities he had experienced. Instead, he turned to his past selves. "I choose neither path," he said firmly. "I am all of these and none of them. My past shapes me, but it does not define me." As he spoke, the illusions wavered and dissolved. The voice of the hollow flea seemed to hold a note of approval as it said, "Wisdom indeed, but this is only the beginning." The mist swirled again, and suddenly Wukong found himself back in the celestial court. But this wasn't the court as it truly was. This was the court of his deepest desires. Here he sat upon the Jade Emperor's throne, the assembled gods and immortals bowing before him. A golden crown rested upon his brow, and he could feel the raw power of heaven coursing through him. This was everything he had once fought for, everything he had once believed he deserved. "Is this not what you want, Monkey King?" The hollow flea whispered, "To rule, to be acknowledged as the most powerful being in all creation." For a moment Wukong was tempted. The power called to him, singing in his veins. But then he remembered. The village suffering under the corrupted mountain god, the balance that needed to be maintained, the true nature of his role in the cosmic order. He stood from the throne. "No," he said, his voice echoing with certainty. "This is not what I want. This is not who I am meant to be." The illusion shattered like glass, and Wukong found himself in a new scenario. This time he was back on the mountain of flowers and fruits, surrounded by his monkey kin. They frolicked without a care, ignorant of the greater cosmos and its troubles. Perhaps this, then. The hollow flea suggested a return to innocence, to shed the burden of cosmic responsibility and live a simple life. Wukong watched the carefree monkeys with a mix of longing and sadness. Part of him yearned for that simplicity, for the days when his greatest concern was finding the sweetest peaches. But he knew, deep in his soul, that he could never truly go back. "I've seen too much," he said softly. "Learned too much. I can't pretend ignorance, no matter how tempting it might be." The scene dissolved, replaced by an endless void. Wukong floated in nothingness, completely alone. And what of this? The hollow flea's voice was gentle now, almost compassionate. The ultimate release. No more responsibility, no more conflict. Just peace. Wukong closed his eyes, feeling the temptation of oblivion. How easy it would be to let go, to fade into the cosmic background and leave the struggles of existence behind. But then he thought of his friends, the Bull King, Ping Ping, even the redeemed Razi. He thought of the mortals who depended on the proper functioning of the cosmic order. He thought of all the wonders and horrors he had witnessed, and all that he had yet to see. His eyes snapped open. "No," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I choose life, in all its messy, complicated glory. I choose to keep fighting, to keep seeking balance." The void vanished, and Wukong found himself back on the silver path. But now, he realized, the path was not outside him, it ran through him, a shimmering thread connecting him to all of existence. The voice of the hollow flea spoke one last time, filled with what sounded like pride. "You have faced your deepest fears and desires, son Wukong. You have looked into the heart of who you are and who you might become. What have you learned?" Wukong was quiet for a long moment, reflecting on all he had experienced. Finally he said, "I've learned that I am not defined by any single aspect of myself. I am not just the rebel, or the prisoner, or the wise sage. I am all of these and more. My strength comes not from denying parts of myself, but from embracing the whole." He paused, then continued, "I've learned that true power isn't about ruling over others or escaping responsibility. It's about finding one's place in the great tapestry of existence and fulfilling that role to the best of one's ability." The mists began to clear, revealing the exit from the hollow flea. As Wukong walked towards it, he felt fundamentally changed. The illusions he had faced had stripped away the last of his uncertainties, leaving behind a core of unshakable purpose. "Thank you," he said to the sentient realm around him, "for showing me who I truly am," as he stepped out of the hollow flea, back into the world where his companions waited. Wukong knew that the final battles against the Yai lay ahead, but now he faced them not as a divided being, torn between past and future, power and wisdom, but as a fully integrated self. The Monkey King had found his truth, and armed with that truth, he was ready to face whatever challenges the cosmos might throw his way. Chapter 16. Reunion with Master Pig. The tavern at the crossroads of realms was unlike any other in existence. Beings from every corner of creation gathered here, where the boundaries between worlds grew thin. Celestial light mingled with infernal shadow, and the air buzzed with a cacophony of languages both mortal and divine. It was here that Sun Wukong chose to meet his old comrade, Master Pig. Wukong sat at a corner table, nursing a bowl of celestial wine that shimmered like liquid starlight. The Bull King and Ping Ping had remained outside, keeping watch for any signs of trouble. After the experiences in the hollow flea, Wukong felt he needed to face this reunion alone. A commotion at the tavern's entrance drew his attention. There, wedged in the doorway and arguing loudly with the impassive golem bouncer, was a figure Wukong would recognize anywhere. Master Pig hadn't changed much in the centuries since they'd last met. He was still enormous, still pink-skinned and bristly, with a face that somehow managed to be both porcine and expressive. He was dressed in finery that might have once been impressive, but was now stained and rumpled. "Don't you know who I am?" Master Pig was bellowing. "I'll have you know I am a high-ranking official in the celestial bureaucracy. I demand, let him in," Wukong called out, unable to suppress a grin. "He's with me." The golem stepped aside, and Master Pig stumbled into the tavern. His small eyes widened as they fell on Wukong. "Well, well," he snorted, making his way to Wukong's table. "If it isn't the great Sun Wukong himself. To what do I owe the displeasure?" Wukong gestured for Master Pig to sit. "Come now, old friend, is that any way to greet a fellow troublemaker?" Master Pig plopped down heavily in the chair across from Wukong, eyeing him suspiciously. "Friend, last I checked, friends don't get friends imprisoned under mountains for centuries." Wukong winced. "Ah, yes, about that." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I owe you an apology, Pigsy. My rebellion. It affected more than just me. I never considered how it might impact those close to me." Master Pig's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Well, strike me down. The Monkey King apologizing. Maybe you did learn something during your time under that mountain." Wukong smiled ruefully. "More than you know. But come, let's not dwell on past grievances. Tell me, how have you fared? I hear you've moved up in the world." At this, Master Pig puffed up with pride. "Indeed I have. Deputy Assistant Under-Secretary to the Celestial Minister of Mundane Affairs at your service." He deflated slightly. "It's not as impressive as it sounds." "Oh," Wukong leaned forward, genuinely curious. "Trouble in paradise." Master Pig glanced around furtively, then leaned in close. "Between you and me," he whispered, his breath smelling of fermented peaches, "something's rotten in the state of heaven. The bureaucracy's a mess. Half the departments don't know what the other half are doing, and there are whispers of unsavory alliances." Wukong's eyes narrowed. "Unsavory how?" There are factions, Master Pig continued, warming to his subject. Some who think we should be taking a more proactive approach to the eye situation. They talk about harnessing its power, using it to rejuvenate the celestial order. That's madness, Wukong breathed. Don't they understand the nature of the eye? It can't be controlled. Master Pig nodded vigorously. That's what I keep saying. But no one listens to a mere deputy assistant undersecretary. He paused, eyeing Wukong speculatively. But they might listen to you. Wukong sat back, his mind racing. This complicates things. I had hoped for more support from the celestial bureaucracy in our quest. Not whatever this is. Quest! Master Pig's ears perked up. What quest? Briefly, Wukong outlined their mission to gather the remaining relics and restore the cosmic balance. As he spoke, he saw a familiar glint appear in Master Pig's eyes, a mix of excitement and avarice that had so often led them into trouble in the past. Now that sounds like an adventure worthy of the great Master Pig, he declared, pounding the table for emphasis. Several nearby patrons glared at the disturbance, but quickly looked away when they met Wukong's gaze. Count me in. Wukong couldn't help but laugh. Just like old times, eh? But are you sure? This won't be a pleasure jaunt. We're facing forces that could unravel reality itself. Master Pig waved a hand dismissively. Bah! Unraveling reality is just another Tuesday for us. Besides, he added, his voice growing serious, someone needs to keep an eye on you. Make sure you don't go power mad again. There was a moment of tension, then both of them burst out laughing. It felt good, Wukong realized, to reconnect with his old friend. For all their past conflicts, there was a comfort in having someone who truly knew him, who had seen him at his best and worst. Very well, Wukong said, raising his bowl of celestial wine in a toast. Welcome aboard, old friend. Now, tell me what you know about Mount Tuag. That's where our next relic awaits. Master Pig's eyes widened. Mount Tuag. Oh, monkey, you don't know what you're getting into. That place, it's not natural. Even the gods fear to tread there. Perfect, Wukong grinned. Sounds like just our kind of place. As Master Pig began to share what he knew of the mysterious mountain, Wukong felt a sense of completeness he hadn't realized he'd been missing. The team was coming together, the wisdom of the Bull King, the determination of Ping Ping, and now the blend of courage and comedic relief that Master Pig brought. Whatever challenges lay ahead at Mount Tuag, whatever plots were unfolding in the celestial bureaucracy, Wukong knew they would face them together. The balance of all realms hung in the balance, and the Monkey King was gathering a team worthy of the task. As they left the tavern, stepping back into the swirling energies of the crossroads of realms, Wukong felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but for the first time in eons he didn't have to walk it alone. The true test awaited on the slopes of Mount Tuag, and Sun Wukong, the great sage equal to heaven, was ready to meet it head-on. Chapter 17. The 5 Elements Trial. Mount Tuag loomed before them, its peak lost in swirling clouds that pulsed with otherworldly energy. Sun Wukong, the Bull King, Ping Ping, and Master Pig stood at its base, each feeling the weight of the challenge ahead. Well? Master Pig broke the silence, his voice strained with forced cheer. It's not the most inviting mountain I've ever seen. Are we sure we can't find our relic on a nice sunny beach somewhere? Wukong managed a wry smile. Come now, old friend, where's your sense of adventure? I think I left it back at the tavern, Master Pig grumbled, but there was a glint of excitement in his eyes that belied his complaints. As they began their ascent, the very air around them seemed to thicken with ancient power. Wukong felt the relics he carried pulse in response, as if recognizing a kindred energy. They hadn't climbed far when they encountered their first obstacle, a vast chasm that cut across the entire face of the mountain. On the other side, barely visible through the mist, stood an ornate gateway carved with symbols representing the 5 elements. Well, the Bull King rumbled. "I suppose we're not meant to simply walk up to the summit." No sooner had he spoken than a bridge of pure light materialized across the chasm. As they watched, it separated into 5 distinct paths, each glowing with a different color: green, red, yellow, white, and blue. A voice, ancient and resonant, echoed from the gateway. "Children of heaven and earth, you who seek the sacred relic, hear me. Before you lie the 5 elemental trials. Only by mastering each element, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, can you prove yourselves worthy. Choose your paths wisely, for each must walk alone." Wukong exchanged glances with his companions. "It seems we're to be tested individually," he said. "Are you ready?" They nodded, determination evident in their faces. One by one they stepped onto their chosen paths. Wukong to the green of wood, the Bull King to the red of fire, Ping Ping to the yellow of earth, and Master Pig, after some hesitation, to the white of metal. As Wukong walked the verdant path of wood, he felt the energy of growth and flexibility flow through him. The bridge beneath his feet transformed into a tangle of living vines and branches, constantly shifting and rearranging themselves. "Adapt or fall, Monkey King," the voice intoned. "As the tree bends with the wind, so must you bend with the flow of existence." Wukong understood. He let go of his rigid form, allowing his body to flow like the wood around him. He twisted and contorted, moving with the ever-changing path rather than against it. As he did, he felt a surge of power, the ability to adapt, to grow, to renew himself in the face of adversity. Meanwhile, the Bull King faced a wall of searing flame on the path of fire. The heat was intense enough to melt stone, but he stood firm, drawing upon his inner strength. "Passion without control leads to destruction," the voice warned. "Master the flame within, Bull King, and the external fire cannot harm you." Closing his eyes, the Bull King focused on the fire of his spirit, his love for his daughter, his determination to right the wrongs of the past. He let this inner flame grow, matching and then overwhelming the external fire. The inferno parted before him, recognizing a master of its element. Ping Ping, on the path of earth, found herself in complete darkness, surrounded by pressing stone. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm her. "The earth is not just unyielding strength, young one," the voice guided. "It is also nurturing, patient, the foundation upon which all else is built." Taking a deep breath, Ping Ping placed her hands on the surrounding stone. She felt the slow, steady pulse of the mountain itself, the eons of patience it took to rise from the earth. Gradually the stone began to yield, forming a path beneath her feet as she walked with newfound confidence. Master Pig, to his surprise, found the path of metal to be the most challenging. The bridge became a series of razor-sharp blades and unyielding barriers. "Metal is refinement, heavenly marshal," the voice explained. "It is the purification of base elements into something greater. What within you needs to be refined." Grumbling, Master Pig reflected on his life, his gluttony, his laziness, his often misplaced priorities. As he acknowledged each flaw, accepting it as part of himself but committing to improvement, the metal beneath his feet softened and reformed, creating a smooth path forward. As his companions faced their trials, Wukong found himself before a rushing river on the path of water. The current was impossibly strong, threatening to sweep away anything in its path. "Water can carve through mountains or nurture the tiniest seed," the voice reminded him. "It is strength and gentleness in one. Find that balance within yourself, son Wukong." Wukong thought of his journey, the destruction he had once wrought, the lives he now sought to protect. He let the rigidity of his old self wash away, embracing both the power and the fluidity of water. As he did, he found he could walk upon the river's surface, neither dominating it nor being dominated by it. As each of them completed their individual trials, they found themselves reunited before the gateway. But their challenges were not yet over. "You have proven your mastery of the individual elements," the voice declared. "Now, show us how they work in harmony." The gateway swung open, revealing a vast chamber within the mountain. At its center floated the relic they sought, surrounded by a swirling vortex of elemental energies. Understanding dawned on Wukong. "Together," he said to his companions, "we must combine our elemental mastery." They moved as one, each calling upon the element they had mastered. Wukong's adaptability of wood, the Bull King's controlled passion of fire, Ping Ping's nurturing strength of earth, and Master Pig's refined purity of metal, all flowed together, guided by Wukong's balanced force of water. The elemental vortex responded, aligning with their combined energy. Slowly the relic descended into Wukong's outstretched hands. As his fingers closed around it, Wukong felt a rush of power unlike anything he had experienced before. It wasn't just raw strength, but a deep, fundamental understanding of the building blocks of reality itself. The voice spoke one final time. "You have proven yourselves worthy, children of heaven and earth. The power of the 5 elements is yours to command, Son Wukong. Use it wisely, for in balance lies the key to defeating the chaos that threatens all realms." As they emerged from Mount Tuog, each of them forever changed by their experiences, Wukong knew they were one step closer to their ultimate goal. The Eye's threat loomed larger than ever, but so did their power to confront it. The Monkey King looked at his companions. The Bull King standing tall and proud, Pigsy with a newfound sense of purpose, and Ping Ping, her eyes shining with the confidence of one who has faced her fears and emerged victorious. "Well done, my friends," Wukong said, a fierce pride in his voice. "We've passed the 5 elements trial, but our greatest challenge still lies ahead." As they set off towards their next destination, the power of the elements thrummed through Wukong's very being. He was no longer just the Monkey King, the great sage equal to heaven. He was becoming something more, a true guardian of cosmic balance. The final battle approached, and Sun Wukong was ready to meet it with all the wisdom and power he had gained. Chapter 18. The Eternal Battlefield. The air shimmered like a heat haze as Sun Wukong, the Bull King, Ping Ping and Master Pig stepped through the portal into the eternal battlefield. The transition was jarring. One moment they stood in the peaceful aftermath of their triumph at Mount Tuag, the next they were plunged into a maelstrom of chaos and violence. The landscape before them defied logic. Islands of rock floated in a turbulent sky, each a miniature war zone. On one, armies clashed with swords and spears in a scene reminiscent of mortal conflicts. On another, celestial beings hurled bolts of divine energy at each other. Demons and angels grappled in midair, while elemental forces collided in spectacular displays of power. "By all the gods!" Master Pig breathed, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and horror. "What is this place?" Wukong's expression was grim. "This, old friend, is where conflicts unresolved in the mortal and celestial realms come to play out for eternity. Every battle ever fought, every grudge never settled, they all find their way here eventually." The Bull King snorted, a spark of his old warrior spirit kindling in his eyes. "A place of eternal combat. Sounds invigorating." "Father," Ping Ping chided gently, "remember what we learned about balance. This is not balance, this is madness." Wukong nodded approvingly at Ping Ping's insight. "Exactly. And somewhere in this chaos is the next relic we seek. The question is, how do we find it without being drawn into the conflicts around us?" No sooner had he spoken than a battle cry rang out. A group of warriors, their armor a patchwork of styles from across history, charged towards them with weapons raised. "Intruders," their leader bellowed, "choose your allegiance or perish." Wukong stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We choose no side but our own," he declared. "We're not here to fight." The warrior leader laughed harshly. "Then you've come to the wrong place, monkey. Here, everyone fights. It's the natural order of things." With that, he swung his massive sword at Wukong's head. The Monkey King could have easily dodged or countered the attack. Instead, drawing upon the lessons of the 5 elements, he stood his ground, allowing his body to flow like water. The sword passed harmlessly through him as if he were made of mist. The warrior stumbled, thrown off balance by the lack of resistance. "What sorcery is this?" he demanded. "Not sorcery," Wukong replied calmly. "Understanding, tell me, warrior, how long have you been fighting here?" The man blinked, confusion replacing anger on his face. "First, I don't know. It feels like forever. And what are you fighting for? What great cause drives you to endless battle?" The warrior opened his mouth to reply, then closed it again. For the first time, doubt crept into his eyes. I can't remember. We've always fought. It's just what we do." Wukong placed a hand on the warrior's shoulder. "But it doesn't have to be. Look around you. All this conflict, all this struggle, what has it achieved? Has any side ever truly won?" As he spoke, Wukong became aware of a change in the air around them. The sounds of battle began to fade as more and more combatants paused to listen. "The eternal battlefield exists because we allow it to," Wukong continued, his voice carrying across the floating islands. "We feed it with our grudges, our desire for dominance, our fear of the other. But what if there was another way?" Drawing upon the power of the relics and his mastery of the 5 elements, Wukong began to glow with a soft golden light. Those nearest to him felt a sense of peace wash over them, a respite from the constant drive to fight. "I offer you a choice," Wukong declared. "Continue this endless cycle of violence, achieving nothing, changing nothing, or lay down your arms and seek a new path, one of balance, of understanding, of true strength." For a moment, the eternal battlefield was silent. Then, slowly, weapons began to lower. Enemies who had been locked in combat for eons looked at each other with new eyes, seeing not foes but fellow beings trapped in the same cycle. But not everyone was swayed. From the turbulent sky, a figure wreathed in chaotic energy descended, a manifestation of the Yi itself. "Pretty words, Monkey King," it hissed, its form constantly shifting and roiling. "But conflict is the natural state of the universe. Order is an illusion. Only in chaos can true freedom be found." The being lashed out with tendrils of entropic force, threatening to undo the peace Wukong had fostered. But the Monkey King stood firm, drawing upon all he had learned in his journey. "You're wrong," Wukong stated, his voice calm but filled with unshakable conviction. "Chaos and order, creation and destruction, these are 2 halves of the same whole. True freedom, true strength, comes from understanding and embracing both." As he spoke, Wukong began to change. His form flickered, embodying all his past selves, the rebellious trickster, the imprisoned penitent, the awakened protector, and then something more. He became a living embodiment of balance, a bridge between chaos and order. The Yi manifestation recoiled, its chaotic energy unable to find purchase against Wukong's perfect equilibrium. With a screech of frustration it retreated, leaving behind a swirling vortex of energy. And there, at the heart of the vortex, pulsed the relic they had been seeking. Wukong turned to his companions who had been watching the confrontation with awe. "Together," he said simply. Understanding, they joined hands. The Bull King's strength, Ping Ping's compassion, Master Pig's loyalty, all flowed into Wukong, complementing his own power. As one, they reached into the vortex and claimed the relic. As Wukong's fingers closed around it, a wave of energy pulsed outward. The floating islands of the eternal battlefield began to dissolve, not into nothingness, but into motes of light. The combatants, freed from their endless cycle, found themselves returning to their own realms, carrying with them the lessons learned. When the light faded, Wukong and his companions stood in a peaceful meadow. The eternal battlefield was gone, transformed by their actions into a realm of healing and reconciliation. "Well," Master Pig said, breaking the awed silence, "I suppose that's one way to win a war. Simply make everyone forget what they were fighting about in the first place." Wukong chuckled, but his eyes were serious as he examined the newly acquired relic. "It's not about forgetting, old friend. It's about remembering what truly matters. The battle against the Yai isn't one we can win through force alone. We must show all realms a better way, a way of balance." The Bull King nodded thoughtfully. "A noble goal, Wukong. But will it be enough? The Yai's corruption runs deep." "It has to be enough," Ping Ping said firmly. "After what we've seen here, I believe more than ever that Wukong's path is the right one." As they prepared to leave this transformed realm, Wukong felt the weight of his role more keenly than ever. The power he now wielded was immense, but so too was the responsibility. The final confrontation with the Yai loomed, and the fate of all realms hung in the balance. But looking at his companions, seeing the trust and determination in their eyes, Wukong knew they were ready. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as champions of a new cosmic balance. The Monkey King squared his shoulders, the relic pulsing with power in his hand. The true test still awaited, but for the first time, Sun Wukong felt truly equal to the task before him. Chapter 19. Confrontation with the Jade Emperor. The gates of heaven loomed before Sun Wukong and his companions, their pearlescent surface shimmering with divine energy. It was a sight that once filled Wukong with rebellious glee, then bitter resentment. Now he regarded it with a complex mixture of emotions, respect, wariness, and a touch of nostalgia. "Well," Master Pig muttered, shifting nervously from hoof to hoof, "this brings back memories, mostly unpleasant ones." The Bull King placed a reassuring hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Stay close, Ping Ping. The celestial court can be unpredictable." Wukong nodded, his expression serious. "Remember, we're here to seek the Jade Emperor's aid against the Yai, not to start another rebellion. Let me do the talking." As they approached, the gates swung open silently. A contingent of celestial guards awaited them, their faces impassive but their grips tight on their divine weapons. "Sun Wukong," the lead guard intoned, "great sage equal to heaven, the Jade Emperor awaits you in the grand hall of celestial balance." Wukong raised an eyebrow at the formal reception. "Well, at least we're not being thrown into celestial prison. That's an improvement from my last visit." They were escorted through the gleaming streets of heaven, past gardens of unearthly beauty and palaces that defied mortal architecture. Immortals and lesser deities stopped to stare as they passed, whispering among themselves at the sight of the once notorious Monkey King and his unusual entourage. Finally, they arrived at the grand hall of celestial balance. Its doors, carved from a single piece of jade the size of a mountain, swung open at their approach. The hall within was vast beyond comprehension, its ceiling lost in a swirling cosmos of stars and nebulae. At its centre, seated upon a throne that seemed to be composed of pure light, was the Jade Emperor himself. Wukong and his companions approached, bowing deeply before the throne. When they straightened, Wukong found himself meeting the Jade Emperor's gaze. Those eyes, ancient beyond measure, held a wisdom that even Wukong's recent experiences could not match. "Sun Wukong," the Jade Emperor's voice resonated through the hall, carrying the weight of eons. "Once our greatest defender, then our most troublesome rebel. And now, what are you now, I wonder?" Wukong took a deep breath, centering himself. "I am what I have always been, your celestial majesty. A seeker of truth, a challenger of boundaries. But I have learned that true strength lies not in defiance or submission, but in balance." The Jade Emperor's expression remained impassive, but there was a glimmer of something, approval, amusement, in his eyes. "Pretty words, Monkey King, but what brings you back to our realm? Surely not mere nostalgia." "The Yai," Wukong said simply. "Its corruption spreads through all realms, threatening the very fabric of existence. We've come to seek heaven's aid in confronting this cosmic threat." At the mention of the Yai, a ripple of unease passed through the assembled celestial courtiers. The Jade Emperor's brow furrowed, the first crack in his stoic demeanour. "You speak of matters beyond your understanding, Sun Wukong," he said, his voice sharp. "The Yai is not some mere demon to be banished or monster to be slain. It is a fundamental force of the universe, as necessary as creation itself. Wukong nodded, surprising the Emperor with his agreement. You're right. The Yai cannot and should not be destroyed, but it has grown too powerful, too chaotic. The balance has been disrupted, and all realms suffer for it. He gestured to his companions. We have travelled across worlds, faced trials of body and spirit. We've seen the devastation the Yai's unchecked power can wreak. But we've also witnessed the possibility of harmony, of a new balance between order and chaos.
The Bull King stepped forward, his voice rumbling through the hall.
Great Emperor, I once stood against heaven, blinded by grief and rage, but I have seen the wisdom in Wukong's path. The old ways of rigid order cannot stand against the Ai's chaos. We must find a new way. Ping Ping, her voice clear and strong despite the augure's setting, added, The mortal realms cry out for protection, Your Majesty. They look to heaven for guidance, for hope. Will you turn your back on them in their hour of need? Even Master Pig found his courage, puffing out his chest as he declared, Besides, if the Yai wins, there won't be any more celestial peaches to enjoy. And that, Your Excellency, would be the greatest tragedy of all.
A surprised chuckle rippled through the hall at Pig's words, breaking the tension.
The Jade Emperor himself allowed a small smile to grace his features. You have grown, Sun Wukong, he said, his tone softer now. All of you have. Perhaps it is time for heaven to grow as well. He rose from his throne, descending the steps to stand before Wukong. Up close, the Monkey King could see the toll recent events had taken on the Emperor. Lines of worry etched into his ageless face, a weariness in his divine posture. You are right about the balance being disrupted, the Jade Emperor admitted. We have felt it even here in the celestial realm. But the bureaucracy of heaven is resistant to change. Many fear that embracing chaos, even in the name of balance, will lead to our downfall. Wukong nodded, understanding. Change is never easy, especially for those accustomed to power. But sometimes it is necessary. The Jade Emperor studied Wukong for a long moment, as if seeing him truly for the first time. Then he made a decision. Very well, Sun Wukong. Heaven will aid you in your quest to restore cosmic balance. But first, you must prove yourself worthy, not just to me, but to all the celestial court. With a wave of his hand, the Emperor conjured 3 objects. A golden water jug, an iron rod burning with divine fire, and a glowing orb that seemed to contain a universe in miniature. 3 trials await you, Monkey King, the Jade Emperor declared. 3 chances to demonstrate that you are truly worthy of heaven's trust and power. Pass these tests, and you will have not just our aid, but our blessing in your confrontation with the Eye. Wukong looked at the objects, then back at his companions. Their faces showed a mixture of concern and determination. Finally, he turned back to the Jade Emperor, a familiar mischievous glint in his eye. Well, Wukong said, cracking his knuckles, I've never been one to back down from a challenge. When do we start? The Jade Emperor's lips quirked in the barest hint of a smile. Now, Sun Wukong, your final test begins now. As the hall around them began to shimmer and change, transforming into the first of the 3 trial grounds, Wukong felt a surge of anticipation. This was it, the moment that would determine not just his fate, but the fate of all realms. The Monkey King squared his shoulders, ready to face whatever heaven could throw at him. For he was Sun Wukong, great sage equal to heaven, and he had a universe to save. Chapter 20, The 3 Ordeals. The grand hall of celestial balance shimmered and transformed, reality bending to the will of the Jade Emperor. Sun Wukong found himself standing alone in a vast, misty plain. His companions were gone, but he could feel their support like a warm current in his chest. The Jade Emperor's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. The 3 ordeals begin, Sun Wukong. Prove your worth, not through strength or cunning, but through wisdom, compassion, and understanding. First ordeal, the golden water jug the mists parted, revealing a barren landscape cracked with drought. At its center stood a single, withered tree. Beside it materialized the golden water jug Wukong had seen in the celestial court. Bring life to this land, the Jade Emperor commanded. But be warned, the jug contains the waters of eternity. Use it unwisely, and you may do more than you save. Wukong approached the jug, his mind racing. In the past, he might have simply doused the entire area, reveling in his power to transform the landscape. But now, he paused, considering. He knelt beside the withered tree, placing a hand on its bark. He could feel the faintest pulse of life within it, stubbornly clinging to existence. With great care, Wukong poured a single drop of water from the jug onto the tree's roots. The effect was immediate and breathtaking. The tree burst into bloom, its branches extending and multiplying. Roots spread out across the cracked earth, and everywhere they touched, life sprang forth. Grass, flowers, even small saplings erupted from the once barren soil. But Wukong didn't stop there. He walked the perimeter of the new oasis, using his mastery of the water element to guide the tree's growth. He created a harmonious ecosystem, each plant a newborn stream placed with purpose and foresight. When he finished, the golden jug vanished from his hands. The Jade Emperor's voice rang out once more. "Well done, Monkey King! You have shown patience and wisdom, understanding that true change comes not from grand gestures, but from nurturing the potential that already exists." Second ordeal, the iron rod of divine fire. The scene shifted again. Wukong now stood at the edge of a village engulfed in spectral flames. The cries of its inhabitants, trapped and terrified, filled the air. Before him appeared the iron rod, its tip blazing with divine fire. "Save them," came the Emperor's command. "But remember, Monkey King, fire can warm or destroy. How you wield it will determine the fate of many." Wukong's first instinct was to charge in, using the rod to battle the flames directly. But as he gripped the weapon, he felt the true nature of the divine fire. This was no ordinary blaze to be quenched. Instead, Wukong closed his eyes, connecting with the essence of fire itself. He began to dance, the rod moving with fluid grace in his hands. As he danced, he wove a tale with movements and fleeting images born of flame, a story of rebirth, of purification, of the eternal cycle of destruction and creation. The spectral flames responded to his dance. They swirled and twisted, drawn to the rod like moths to a lamp. Wukong guided them, shaping them, until the entire inferno had been condensed into a single brilliant point at the rod's tip. With a final decisive movement, Wukong thrust the rod into the ground. The condensed fire spread through the earth, emerging as warm, life-giving energy. The village was restored, its inhabitants unharmed, their homes and fields renewed and more bountiful than before. As the rod faded from his grasp, the Jade Emperor spoke. "Impressive, son Wukong. You have shown creativity and empathy, understanding that even the most destructive forces can be transformed through wisdom and compassion." Third ordeal, the cosmic orb for the final trial, Wukong found himself floating in a void of stars. Before him hovered the glowing orb, a universe in miniature. "Balance it," the Jade Emperor said simply. "Find harmony between order and chaos, creation and destruction. Show us that you truly understand the nature of cosmic equilibrium." Wukong cupped the orb in his hands, marveling at the swirling galaxies and newborn stars within. He could feel the push and pull of opposing forces, gravity and expansion, light and darkness, life and death. Drawing upon all he had learned in his journey, Wukong began to manipulate the forces within the orb. He nudged stars into stable orbits, guided the formation of planets, and even encouraged the spark of life on worlds ripe for it. But he didn't create a utopia. He allowed for natural disasters, for the death of stars, for the rise and fall of species. He understood now that these apparent calamities were necessary for the health and evolution of the cosmos. As he worked, Wukong felt a profound connection to every speck of dust, every cosmic ray within the orb. He saw himself reflected in its vastness, a being of both chaos and order, with the power to create and destroy. But more than that, He recognized his responsibility as a custodian of this cosmic balance. Hours or eons might have passed as Wukong worked. Finally, he held up the orb, now a perfect microcosm of a balanced universe. As it faded from his hands, returning to the ether, Wukong felt a fundamental shift within himself. He was no longer just the Monkey King, the great sage equal to heaven. He had become something more, a true guardian of cosmic equilibrium. The void dissolved, and Wukong found himself back in the grand hall of celestial balance. His companions rushed to his side, relief evident on their faces. Before them stood the Jade Emperor, a look of genuine respect in his ancient eyes. "Sun Wukong," the Emperor's voice rang out, filling the hall, "you have passed the 3 ordeals. You have proven yourself not just powerful but wise, not merely clever but compassionate. You have shown a true understanding of the balance that underlies all existence." He descended from his throne, approaching Wukong with measured steps. "In ages past, I named you Great Sage equal to heaven as a title, a role for you to fulfill. Now I bestow it upon you as a recognition of who you truly are." The Jade Emperor raised his hands, and a crown of pure light materialized above Wukong's head. "Wear this as a symbol not of authority over others, but of your commitment to maintaining cosmic balance. Heaven stands with you, Sun Wukong, in your confrontation with the Yai." As the crown settled upon his brow, Wukong felt the full weight of his new role settle upon his shoulders. He turned to his companions, the Bull King standing proud, Ping Ping with tears of joy in her eyes, and Master Pig trying and failing to look nonchalant. "Thank you," Wukong said, his voice thick with emotion. "All of you, I couldn't have come this far without you." He faced the Jade Emperor once more, his expression resolute. "The Yai's threat grows stronger by the moment. We must act now to restore balance to all realms." The Emperor nodded gravely. "Indeed, go forth, Sun Wukong, with the blessings of heaven. The fate of all existence rests in your hands." As they prepared to depart, ready to face their greatest challenge yet, Wukong felt a sense of clarity and purpose unlike anything he had known before. The journey had been long, filled with trials and transformations, but now at last he was truly ready to fulfill his destiny as the great sage equal to heaven. The final battle awaited, and Sun Wukong, surrounded by friends and imbued with the wisdom of the cosmos, was prepared to meet it head-on. Chapter 21. The Rising of the Yai. The sky above the mortal realm writhed with unnatural energies, great rifts tearing open to reveal glimpses of other worlds. Chaos seeped through these wounds in reality, warping the landscape and twisting living creatures into monstrous new forms. The Yai, that primal force of entropy, was making its final push to unravel the fabric of existence itself. Sun Wukong stood atop a mountain peak, the crown of celestial light glimmering upon his brow. Beside him, the Bull King, Ping Ping, and Master Pig watched the unfolding catastrophe with grim determination. "Well," Master Pig quipped, his voice strained, "I don't suppose the Yai would consider taking a day off. I hear entropy can be awfully tiring work." Wukong managed a wry smile, appreciating his old friend's attempt at levity even in this dire moment. "I'm afraid not, old friend. This is it. The moment everything we've fought for hangs in the balance." The Bull King's eyes narrowed as he scanned the corrupted horizon. "We can't face this alone, Wukong. Even with heaven's blessing, even with all we've learned, this is beyond any of us." Ping Ping nodded in agreement. "We need help. Allies from every realm, united against this threat." Wukong closed his eyes, reaching out with his newfound cosmic awareness. He could feel the threads of connection linking him to all the beings they'd encountered on their journey, all the lives they'd touched. "You're right," he said, opening his eyes with renewed determination. "It's time to call in every favor, every alliance we've made. This isn't just our fight, it's a battle for the fate of all realms." With a twirl of his fingers, Wukong summoned the Ruyi Jingu Bang, his legendary staff. It had been ages since he'd wielded it, but now it felt like an extension of his very being. "Bull King," Wukong commanded, his voice carrying the weight of his new authority, "travel to the demon realms." Even they must see that the Yai threatens their existence. Rally whatever forces you can."
The Bull King nodded, a fierce grin spreading across his face.
"It'll be just like old times. Those demon lords won't know what hit them."
"Ping Ping," Wukong continued, "return to heaven.
"Inform the Jade Emperor that the final battle is upon us. Bring whatever celestial forces he can spare." Ping Ping bowed, determination shining in her eyes. "I won't let you down." "And me?" Master Pig asked, trying to mask his nervousness with bravado. "Let me guess, I get to make a stirring speech to inspire the earthworms." Wukong chuckled. "Not quite. I need you to gather our allies from the mortal realm, the mountain god we saved, the villagers we've helped everyone. They may not have divine powers, but their spirit, their will to survive, could make all the difference." As his companions set off on their vital missions, Wukong took a deep breath. There was one more ally he needed to call upon, perhaps the most important of all. Closing his eyes once more, Wukong focused his thoughts on a single being, Razi, his old friend turned adversary, now an agent of the Yai itself. "Razi," Wukong projected his thoughts across the cosmos, "I know you can hear me. I know the real you is still in there, buried beneath the Yai's corruption. We need to talk." For a long moment there was nothing but the howling of chaotic winds. Then, like a whisper in the back of his mind, Wukong heard a familiar voice. "Why should I listen to you, Monkey King? You, who always stood in the spotlight while I lingered in the shadows." Wukong's heart ached at the bitterness in Razi's tone. "Because I was wrong," he admitted. "I took our friendship for granted. I never saw how my actions affected you. But Razi, what the Yai offers isn't the answer. It's not freedom, it's oblivion." A shimmering portal opened before Wukong, and out stepped Razi. The fox spirit's form was unstable, flickering between his familiar shape and a writhing mass of entropic energy. "Look at what's happening, Wukong." Razi gestured to the chaos engulfing the world. "The old order is crumbling. No more rigid hierarchies, no more fate or destiny. Pure possibility." Wukong shook his head sadly. "Is that what you really want, old friend? A universe of endless chaos where nothing can grow or thrive, where the very concept of friendship, of love, of meaning dissolves into randomness." He took a step towards Razi, his hand outstretched. "I've learned so much on this journey, Razi, about balance, about the true nature of strength. Chaos and order, creation and destruction, they're two halves of the same whole. We need both. But right now, the balance has tipped too far. If we don't stop the Yai, everything will be lost." Razi's form stabilized slightly, doubt creeping into his eyes. "And what would you have me do? I'm part of the Yai now. I can't just switch sides." "You can," Wukong insisted. "You have a choice, Razi. You've always had a choice. Join us. Help us restore balance. Your understanding of the Yai could be the key to saving all realms." For a long, tense moment, Razi stood motionless. The fate of all existence seemed to hang on his decision. Then, slowly, he reached out and took Wukong's hand. The instant they touched, a surge of energy pulsed outward. The corruption surrounding Razi burned away, leaving him whole and clear-eyed for the first time in eons. "What have I done?" Razi whispered, horror dawning on his face as he truly saw the devastation the Yai had wrought. Wukong squeezed his friend's hand reassuringly. "What matters is what you do now. Will you stand with us, Razi? Will you help us face the Yai and restore balance to the cosmos?" Razi straightened, a familiar determination settling over his features. "I will. And I think I know how we can win." As Razi began to outline his plan, Wukong felt a surge of hope. One by one, portals began to open around them as their allies answered the call. Celestial warriors strode forth, led by Ping Ping and the Jade Emperor himself. Demon hordes emerged, grudgingly united under the Bull King's leadership. Mortal heroes, guided by Master Pig, stood tall despite their fear. And there, materializing from the swirling energies of the cosmos, came beings Wukong had met on his journey, the Rat Sage. Wise and inscrutable, the sea spirit, fluid and powerful, the ancient tigers from the temple of Crouching Tiger, their eyes gleaming with cosmic knowledge. Wukong looked out at the assembled forces, a union of heaven, hell, earth, and realms beyond imagining. This was it. The final battle for the fate of all existence was about to begin. The Monkey King raised the Rui Jingu Bang high, its golden length catching the light of 1,000,000 fractured realities. "My friends," he called out, his voice carrying across dimensions, "the greatest challenge of our lives awaits us. But together, united in purpose, we will restore balance to the cosmos." A roar of approval shook the very foundations of reality. As one, this army of the United Realms turned to face the oncoming storm of chaos. At the heart of the maelstrom, a singular point of darkness pulsed, the core of the Yi itself. Wukong narrowed his eyes, gripping his staff tightly. "Ready yourselves," he commanded. "We end this now." With that, Sun Wukong, the great sage equal to heaven, leapt into the fray, leading the charge against the very embodiment of cosmic chaos. The battle to decide the fate of all existence had begun. Chapter 22, Battle at the Nexus of Realms. Reality itself seemed to bend and warp as Sun Wukong led the charge into the heart of the Yi's maelstrom. The boundaries between realms had all but dissolved, creating a nightmarish landscape where fragments of heaven, hell, earth, and countless other dimensions collided and merged. Wukong moved with impossible grace, the Rui Jingu Bang a blur of golden light, as he carved a path through waves of chaotic energy. Behind him, the united forces of order fought with everything they had. The Bull King bellowed war cries that shook the foundations of reality, his massive fists shattering manifestations of pure entropy. Ping Ping danced through the chaos, her agility and quick thinking allowing her to disrupt the Yi's attempts to reform. Master Pig, despite his fears, had found his courage. He wielded his rake with surprising skill, each sweep banishing pockets of disorder back into nothingness. "I'm getting too old for this," he grumbled, even as he saved a group of mortal warriors from a collapsing pocket dimension. In the skies above, celestial armies clashed with swirling vortexes of UN creation. The Jade Emperor himself stood at the forefront, his divine light a beacon of hope in the madness. But for every victory, for every patch of chaos beaten back, two more seemed to spring up. The Yi was relentless, its very nature allowing it to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Wukong fought his way to where Rasi stood, the fox spirit, using his intimate knowledge of the Yi to predict and counter its moves. "It's not working," Rasi shouted over the din of battle. "We're fighting symptoms, not the cause." "We need to strike at the core." Wukong nodded grimly. He had come to the same conclusion. "Can you locate it?" he asked. Rasi closed his eyes, reaching out with senses attuned to the Yi's chaotic frequencies. "There." He pointed to a spot where the fabric of reality seemed to fold in on itself. "The Eye of the Storm!" The nexus point where all realms intersect. That's where the heart of the Yi resides. "Then that's where we need to go," Wukong declared. He turned to his closest companions. "Bull King, Ping Ping Pig with me. Rasi, guide us in. The rest of you hold the line here. Buy us the time we need." As they fought their way towards the nexus point, the resistance grew fiercer. The Yi seemed to sense their intent, throwing everything it had at them. Tendrils of unreality lashed out, threatening to erase them from existence with a touch. Wukong deflected what he could with his staff, but even he couldn't be everywhere at once. A tendril slipped past his guard, heading straight for Ping Ping. But before it could strike, the Bull King intercepted it, roaring in pain as chaos energy seared his flesh. "Father!" Ping Ping cried out in anguish. The Bull King stumbled but didn't fall. "I'm all right, little one," he grunted. "It'll take more than that to keep me down." They pressed on, drawing closer to the heart of the maelstrom. The very air around them crackled with paradoxical energies, simultaneously pulling them apart and crushing them together. Finally, they reached the nexus point. Before them swirled a singularity of pure chaos, a window into the primordial void that existed before creation itself. "Now what?" Master Pig shouted, his voice nearly lost in the howling winds of uncreation. Wukong stepped forward, his eyes glowing with cosmic understanding. "Now," he said, his voice carrying the weight of eons, "we restore balance." Drawing upon all he had learned, all he had become, Wukong began to radiate pure, harmonizing energy. He reached out with his mind, with his very essence, seeking to connect with the core of the Yai, but it wasn't enough. The chaos was too vast, too primal. Wukong felt himself beginning to be overwhelmed. Then he felt a hand on his shoulder. Rassi stood beside him, channeling his own understanding of chaos into Wukong's efforts. The Bull King stepped up, lending his indomitable strength. Ping Ping added her compassion and hope, while Master Pig contributed his unwavering loyalty. One by one, the allies they had gathered joined the effort. The Jade Emperor, the Rat Sage, the Sea Spirit, Celestials and Demons and Mortal Heroes, all lent their unique energies to Wukong's cause. In that moment, Sun Wukong understood what needed to be done. He saw the truth that had eluded him for so long, that he was not just a being straddling the line between order and chaos, but a bridge between them. "Thank you, my friends," Wukong said, a sad smile on his face. "But this final step I must take alone." Before anyone could stop him, Wukong leapt into the heart of the chaotic singularity. As he plunged into that roiling mass of primordial energy, he opened himself fully to both the order he had come to represent and the chaos that had always been a part of him. Within the void, Wukong confronted the true essence of the Yai. It was not malevolent, not truly. It simply was a fundamental force of uncreation as necessary to the cosmos as the drive towards order. "I understand now," Wukong communicated, not in words but in pure concept. "You are not my enemy. You are my other half." With that realization, Wukong did the unthinkable. He opened himself fully, offering his very being as a conduit, a meeting point between chaos and order. The pain was indescribable as opposing cosmic forces warred within him. Wukong felt himself being torn apart and remade with every passing moment. But he held on, drawing upon every lesson, every hardship, every triumph of his long existence. Slowly, agonizingly, balance began to assert itself. The chaotic energies of the Yai, instead of dissipating, began to flow through Wukong, finding harmony with the forces of order. Outside, in what remained of physical reality, Wukong's allies watched in awe as the maelstrom of chaos began to subside. The rifts between realms started to heal, the twisted landscapes beginning to settle back into their proper forms. At the center of it all, suspended in a nimbus of energy that was neither fully order nor pure chaos, hung Sun Wukong. His physical form had become translucent, more energy than matter, but his essence was unmistakable. As the last echoes of the great battle faded, Wukong slowly descended to where his friends waited. They could see that he was changed fundamentally and irrevocably. Power radiated from him in waves, but it was not the raw, uncontrolled might of his youth. This was something else, a perfect balance of creation and destruction, order and chaos. "Wukong," Ping Ping asked hesitantly, "are you? Is it really you?" The being that had been Sun Wukong smiled, and in that smile they saw flashes of the friend they knew, the trickster, the rebel, the protector. "It's me," he confirmed, his voice echoing with newfound power and wisdom. "But also, more. What happens now?" the Bull King asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Wukong looked out at the assembled forces of multiple realms, beings of every shape and nature imaginable. "Now," he said, "we rebuild, we maintain the balance, and we remember that even in our differences, we are all part of the great cosmic dance." As dawn broke over a universe reborn, Sun Wukong, once the Monkey King, now the living embodiment of cosmic balance, prepared to guide all realms into a new era of harmony. The great journey that had begun with a stone egg on a mountain peak had led here, to the very heart of existence itself. The tale of the Monkey King had reached its end, but the story of the cosmos, ever-changing, ever-renewing, would continue on. Chapter 23. The Price of Victory. The dust of battle had settled, but the reverberations of Sun Wukong's cosmic transformation echoed through all realms. As dawn broke over a universe reborn, the full weight of what had transpired began to sink in for those who had witnessed it. Wukong, now a being of pure energy suspended between order and chaos, hovered above the gathered allies. His form shimmered and shifted, sometimes appearing as the Monkey King they knew, other times as a swirling vortex of balanced forces. The Bull King was the first to step forward, his gruff voice tinged with both awe and concern. "Wukong, old friend, what exactly happened to you in there?" Wukong's voice, when he spoke, seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I have become what I was always meant to be," he said, "a bridge between order and chaos, a living fulcrum upon which the balance of all realms now rests." Ping, tears glistening in her eyes, reached out as if to touch him but hesitated. Can you ever return to what you were?" A hint of sadness flickered across Wukong's ethereal features. "No, little one. The Monkey King you knew is gone. But his essence, his memories, his love for all of you, that remains as part of this greater whole." Master Pig, trying to mask his emotion with humour as always, snorted. "Well, that's just great. Who am I supposed to get into trouble with now?" This elicited a chuckle from Wukong, the sound rippling through reality like waves on a cosmic pond. "Oh, Pigsy, I'm sure you'll find a way to keep things interesting." As the initial shock began to wear off, the enormity of the task ahead became clear. Representatives from every realm approached Wukong, seeking guidance, reassurance, and, in some cases, judgment. The Jade Emperor himself bowed low before Wukong. "Great sage," he said, his voice heavy with respect, "heaven itself owes you a debt that can never be repaid. What would you have us do?" Wukong's form solidified slightly, taking on a more recognizable shape as he addressed the Emperor. "The old ways must change," he declared. "The rigid hierarchies, the separation of realms, these only bred resentment and imbalance. We must forge a new path, one of cooperation and mutual understanding between all beings." A murmur ran through the assembled crowd. Demons glanced warily at celestial beings, while mortal heroes shifted uncomfortably next to creatures of myth and legend. Centuries of distrust and conflict couldn't be erased in a moment, even after fighting side by side. Sensing the unease, Wukong spread his arms wide. "I know it won't be easy," he acknowledged, "but look at what we've accomplished here, united against a common threat. Imagine what we could achieve if we maintained that unity, that sense of shared purpose." Razi, still coming to terms with his own role in recent events, stepped forward. "And what of those who've done wrong?" he asked, unable to meet Wukong's gaze. "Those who sided with chaos, who caused harm." Wukong's expression softened as he looked at his old friend. "There must be accountability," he said, "but also mercy and a chance for redemption. After all, if I could change, could grow beyond my past mistakes, why not others?" As Wukong continued to address the concerns of various factions, his closest companions gathered to discuss the new reality they found themselves in. "It's not fair," Ping said, her voice choked with emotion. "He's given everything to save us, and now he can never truly be part of our world again." The Bull King placed a comforting hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Perhaps not in the way he was before," he rumbled. "But look at him, little one. He's become something more, something necessary." Master Pig nodded, uncharacteristically serious. "The monkey always did have to one-up everyone," he said. "Couldn't just save the world, oh no. Had to go and become a fundamental force of the universe. Despite the gravity of the situation, they couldn't help but share a small laugh at that. It was so very Wukong." As the day wore on, plans began to take shape. Wukong, drawing upon his newfound cosmic awareness, helped to redraw the boundaries between realms, not as impenetrable barriers, but as permeable membranes allowing for communication and cooperation. He assigned tasks to his former companions, knowing that his new role would prevent him from interacting with the realms as he once had. The Bull King and Ping Ping were to serve as ambassadors between the mortal world and the celestial realms. Master Pig, much to his surprise, was given the responsibility of overseeing the rehabilitation of reformed demons. Rasi, seeking to atone for his actions, volunteered to monitor the patterns of chaos throughout the realms using his intimate knowledge of the Yai to predict and prevent future imbalances. As twilight fell on the first day of this new cosmic era, Wukong gathered his closest friends for a final private moment. "I want you to know," he said, his form flickering between monkey and pure energy, "that even though I've changed, even though I can no longer be with you as I once was, my love for each of you remains. You are my family, now and always." Tears were shed, embraces exchanged, though touching Wukong now felt like embracing a warm sunbeam. As they said their goodbyes, each of them knew that nothing would ever be the same. But they also knew that thanks to Wukong's sacrifice, there would be a tomorrow for them and for all realms. With a final smile and a wink that was pure Monkey King mischief, Wukong began to fade from view. "Don't look so glum," his voice echoed. "This isn't an end, it's a beginning. And I have a feeling the greatest adventures are yet to come." As Sun Wukong merged with the cosmic tapestry, becoming one with the very fabric of reality, his friends watched with a mixture of sadness and pride. The Monkey King was gone, but his legacy, a universe in balance, a future full of possibility, would endure for eternity. The price of victory had been high, but as the first stars began to twinkle in the sky of a renewed cosmos, it was clear that it had been worth it. Chapter 24. A new journey begins. A century had passed since the great battle against the Yai, a mere blink in the cosmic timescale, but an era of profound change for all realms. The universe, once teetering on the brink of chaos, had found a new equilibrium under the watchful presence of Sun Wukong, now more force of nature than individual being. On the mortal plane, atop the same mountain where a stone egg had once given birth to a monkey destined to shake the heavens, a gathering was taking place. Beings from every realm had come together not in conflict, but in celebration and remembrance. The Bull King, his fur now streaked with silver, stood tall and proud. Beside him, Ping Ping had grown into a formidable leader in her own right, her clever eyes carrying the wisdom of one who had seen the reshaping of reality itself. Master Pig, against all odds, had become a respected elder, though his eyes still twinkled with mischief. Rasi, fully redeemed, now served as a vital link between the forces of order and the necessary chaos that kept the universe dynamic. As the assembled crowd quieted, a shimmer in the air heralded the arrival of the being they had come to honor. Sun Wukong materialized, not as the solid form of the Monkey King, but as a swirling vortex of energy that coalesced into a familiar, yet ethereal shape. "My friends," Wukong's voice resonated through the gathering, carrying to each being present regardless of their native tongue. 100 years ago, we stood united against a threat that would have unraveled all of existence. Today, we stand together not in battle, but in harmony. A cheer went up from the crowd, beings of all shapes and origins voicing their approval. Wukong smiled, the expression conveying both joy and a hint of the mischievous monkey he had once been. "But our work is far from over," he continued. "Balance is not a destination but a journey, one that requires constant vigilance, understanding, and most importantly, new perspectives." With a gesture, Wukong beckoned forward a young monkey who had been waiting at the edge of the gathering. The little one approached with a mix of awe and excitement, his golden fur shimmering in the sunlight. "This," Wukong announced, "is Xiao Hu. Born of stone like I was, filled with potential and a spirit that burns bright. It is time for me to pass on the mantle of Monkey King to a new generation." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the crowd. Ping Ping stepped forward, her brow furrowed with concern. "But Wukong, surely no one can replace you. Your power, your cosmic role." Wukong's laugh was like wind chimes in a summer breeze. My dear Ping Ping, always so quick to worry. I'm not going anywhere. I couldn't if I wanted to. I am as much a part of this universe now as gravity or time. But the realms need more than just a cosmic force. They need a bridge, a being who can walk between worlds, who can remind us all of the joy and wonder that exists alongside duty and balance. He turned to the young monkey who stood straighter under Wukong's ethereal gaze. Xiaohou will not be me, nor should he try to be. His journey will be his own, his challenges unique to his time. But he will carry forward the spirit of what the Monkey King represents: curiosity, courage, and the ability to grow beyond one's origins. Xiaohou bowed deeply, his voice filled with determination as he spoke. I will do my best to honor your legacy, great sage. Wukong's form shimmered with approval. I know you will, and you won't be alone. He looked out at the gathered beings. Each of you has a role to play in maintaining the balance we've achieved. The Jade Emperor and his celestial court, the demon realms, the mortal world, all are links in the great chain of existence. Treat each link with equal respect and care. As Wukong spoke, his energy began to spread, touching each being present. They saw visions of the interconnected nature of reality, the delicate dance of order and chaos that allowed for growth and renewal. When the visions faded, there was a new light of understanding in every eye. Go forth, Wukong said, his voice filled with fondness and pride. Explore the realms. Build bridges where once there were walls. Teach the next generation about the importance of balance, but also about the value of a good prank now and then. This last bit was said with a wink, eliciting chuckles from those who remembered the Monkey King's more mischievous days. As the gathering began to disperse, beings from different realms mingling and chatting in a way that would have been unthinkable a century ago, Wukong's closest companions approached for a final private word. You old trickster, Master Pig grumbled good-naturedly. You had this planned all along, didn't you? Wukong's form rippled with amusement. Let's just say I had a feeling it might be necessary. The universe has a way of providing what's needed when it's needed. The Bull King nodded solemnly. You've given us all a great gift, old friend. Rest assured we'll do our part to guide young Xiaohou and maintain what you've built. I know you will, Wukong said warmly. You've all grown so much. I couldn't be prouder of the beings you've become. Ping Ping, tears glistening in her eyes, asked the question they were all thinking. Will we ever see you again? Like this, I mean. Wukong's form solidified slightly, becoming more monkey-like as he placed an ethereal hand on Ping Ping's cheek. I am always with you, little one. In the balance of the world around you, in the joy of a well-played trick, in the quiet moments of understanding between beings once thought to be enemies. And who knows, the universe is vast and full of wonders. Our paths may cross again in ways we can't even imagine. With those words, Sun Wukong began to fade, merging once more with the cosmic tapestry. But just before he disappeared entirely, his voice echoed one last time. Filled with the boundless optimism that had always been his hallmark, remember, my friends, every ending is just a new beginning in disguise. The greatest adventures are still to come. As the sun set on that momentous day, young Xiaohou stood at the edge of the mountain, looking out at the vast, interconnected realms that were now his to explore. Behind him, the wizened companions of the former Monkey King prepared to guide him on the first steps of his journey. And all around, woven into the very fabric of existence, the essence of Sun Wukong pulsed with excitement for the new tales about to unfold. In the grand cosmic story, one chapter had come to a close, but the book remained open, its pages ready for fresh ink, new heroes and adventures yet unimagined. The legacy of the Monkey King lived on, not as a static memorial, but as a vibrant, ever-evolving force for balance, mischief and growth throughout all realms of existence. And so, as it had begun eons ago with a stone egg on a mountain peak, a new journey was about to begin. The end.